subscribe and they can come right back.
Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. This is Let's Talk About It. And today, my guest is Mac from Surviving Together. Welcome, Mac. I have to
Hi.
ask, is
Mhm.
Mac a nickname?
It is. And it came about because we had Shannon's and Sharon's in the chat, and things were getting really mixed up. And then Shannon named a channel Sharing with Shannon. Her channel. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to go by my nickname and we can just bring me totally out of this. We can not
Well,
have any confusion.
everybody thinks that Echo is my nickname, and unfortunately, it's my legal name. So I, you know,
I love it. I
I,
mean,
I should have come up with a nickname and went by that instead, but everybody who knows me personally knows me as Echo, so it
I
wasn't
think it's
any good.
great.
Hi, Adrian. Hi, the Bud Files. Hello, Teresa. Welcome, welcome.
How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm going to have you go ahead and introduce your channel and tell us a little bit about yourself and about how you got started on YouTube.
Sure. I'm just gonna move this over. I've got your questions as well, just so I can refer back. We can refer back to those too.
Okay.
So, hi, I'm Mac with Surviving Together, and I started my channel at the beginning of 2024, and it is a safe place for sexual assault survivors and other trauma survivors to come and connect with each other and have a safe space to share on their healing journey. um, One of the big purposes of my channel is not only for survivors, but also for anybody who is interested in supporting survivors, and anyone who has kids, anyone who's dealt with trauma. Most of us, in some point of our lives, are going to come across some form of
Mhm.
trauma. How we react to the trauma, how we get through it, depends on a lot of different factors. But I really wanted to take the stigma out of sexual assault. And now also I've gotten more involved with some other people
Mhm.
with domestic violence. And so that people can understand why people stay in a domestic violence situation. How do kids get sucked into, sucked in with a predator? Um, and the strength it takes to be able to heal from that. And we're never going to get out of any of those cycles, particularly uh, as the populace in general, if we don't have education, if people don't understand what's going on, if people don't understand how to support survivors. Because if you don't support survivors the right way, you can end up doing more damage. So I really wanted to create a place where they could come together and that we could learn. So I always have some sort of education, usually with most of my live streams and then chat. But once a month we laugh. First Saturday of every month is Laugh Saturday. So we're always so February 1st. So it'll be next Saturday, actually, right? Yeah, next
Yeah.
Saturday will
Mhm.
be Laugh Saturday, and it's all about laughing because laughter truly is the best medicine,
Yes, it is. And it's
scientifically
a way
proven.
to get out of your own head for a little while and enjoy yourself. And I think a lot of people have the problem of, especially when they're dealing with something that's hard or sad, that, it's okay to laugh too. You don't have to
Absolutely.
be down on yourself all the time. Sometimes you just forgetting about it for a little bit and laughing is the best thing. So I did not know that you do that, but that is great. So that will be something to look forward to on Saturdays. And is that at your 3 o'clock normal
It
time?
is. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We stick it on us on our 3 o'clock. So first Saturday of every month. So it'll be memes or funny stories or stupid criminals or funny pictures or whatever. It can be definitely will usually be a mixture of things. Sometimes we have a guest on who laughs with us. Sometimes we're just laughing with the chat. So all kinds of
And
different
I
things.
noticed, I don't think not this Saturday, but maybe it was last Saturday, there was a guy up on your panel with you. Um,
Um, Probably you're talking about David, and that was a
David,
friend of
maybe.
mine, and he was on last Saturday.
Okay, but
I'll say
he's
that
not on
strongly.
every Saturday with you. He just was on
No,
that one time.
he happened to be, yeah, he was a friend of mine, and it happened to work out to where we could do the stream. So he was there, but he can't always be available. He's in Ohio right now, so
I'm trying to type in the chat, hello, hello, hello,
that's
because
right.
I have a
Misha.
really bad habit about forgetting all about the chat whenever I have somebody to actually talk to. When I'm by myself, it's easy to read the chat and kind of, play off of the chat with the
Yes.
conversation. But when I have somebody to actually talk to, then I'm like, I forget to pay attention to
Yeah.
that, you know. So um, I did watch about your story on your channel.
Mhm.
Um, I kind of I think you said in there, that you didn't even know really that there was that kind of SA as far as like child on child or like it normally when we think of that, we think of it as being an adult and
Absolutely.
a young child.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure that people have been in a situation like that. And maybe because it was another child, they don't consider it as SA like that.
100%. There are some of my subs that are in that situation that it was very validating to them to have that story. So my story actually begins before that. It began when I was 4 years old. And for a long time, I wasn't even really sure what happened or that something happened. Um, I just always kind of had the sense that something did. And I remember just little bits and pieces of being there. And part of me wanted to chalk it up to just being so young. Oh, I just don't have memories. Um, the older I got, I have subsequently learned that, especially that young, we can have those memories. And when we go through significant trauma, our brain shuts down pieces that we don't need in order to protect ourselves. It's going to shut down the pieces that are our memory making. So it's only the ones that are like the most oomph to you at that time. And it could just be a smell, it could be a sight, it could be a touch. It doesn't have to be a visual memory. So when people say, I don't know for certain, I can't remember, like neurologically, I can't remember, but I just know,
Yeah.
believe them, truly believe them. I've subsequently been able to put a few pieces together with that, but that is definitely where my aversion to having anything put in my face comes from. Um, it's always been with me, and I've always had the sense of having like a pillow or a hand or something, covering my face. Um, so that was one thing that I learned out of one of my experiences. And
Well, I have a sister that's 2 years older than I am,
mhm,
and we were raised by a very narcissistically abusive mother, and so I would spend a lot of time with my aunt and uncle, and unfortunately, I blocked a lot of my childhood out
mm,
until recently. And my sister and I were talking one time, and she asked me about if my anything had ever happened with my uncle because she has some memories, but
mhm,
kind of like you were saying, not she can't like pinpoint a certain incident or anything like that.
right.
She just knows that something, and wanted to know if I had any memory, which my memory so, gone and blocked anyway. I didn't. And I spent a
Hmm.
lot of time there. So it could have happened. I just
Right.
didn't know it. But
Exactly.
my sister said that she always, even though she blocked a few things out too, like when she did become a young woman and like her first few sexual encounters, she had these feelings come up that
Hmm.
she knew then, you know, something had to have happened to her
Right.
at one point or another. And I've heard people say that the body keeps score, and it's
Yep.
like that's kind of how she felt like, even though she knew she hadn't been present for anything sexually up until that point, but yet then that brought up those feelings. So that's what I feel like. It, no matter what somebody tells you, if they believe it for whatever reason, they believe it, it's
Hmm.
true for them.
Exactly. And The Body Keeps the Score is also the name of a book. It was a seminal piece of literature written by Bessel van der Kolk, and I have it, and it's wonderful, and it's 350 dense pages. So if you want to ever know anything about it, I mean, like, this is the book to get.
Hmm.
But they've also, in more recent studies, have shown that other cells in our body have memory. It's not just neurological cells, the brain
Hmm.
cells.
Hmm.
So it makes perfect sense that, yeah, we remember, the body remembers trauma. And unless and until that trauma is released from our body is going to remember what has happened to it. So it's no wonder. And actually, I was watching a video today, and it really kind of brought it home in the sense of people who support or law enforcement, that it's all in how we speak to survivors. They're not going to remember an assault in a movie fashion, front to
Exactly.
back, and then be able to say it from back to front. Because I don't know if you've ever heard, if you're not lying about something, you should be able to tell it front to back and back to front, and all the things should match up. Well, we don't. Survivors don't remember things like that. Our body doesn't allow us to. It's not that we're trying to pick and choose what we remember. It's just that's all we have. And so if you ask us to do it backwards and forwards and then backwards, we're gonna mess up. It's just the way it is. And unfortunately, for years and years and years, and really up and until the early 2000s, this led to a lot of victims not being believed because the police thought their stories didn't make sense.
Hmm.
And so how we
And why
support
would
and
you want to tell people if they're going to not believe you? And then you have to take that on too, then start even questioning yourself. Well, maybe I'm, filling in the blanks here, trying to make this story believable. And maybe I'm not remembering everything. And like my sister said, she does not know, like she would never accuse him of anything because she
right,
can't remember enough to definitely say, yes, this happened. But it's, I guess I'm fascinated with the way our brains deal with things,
right,
because so much of the stuff that I blocked out, as soon as my sister would mention something, it was like, oh, yes, I haven't thought about that or had that memory on my own. But as soon as
right.
you bring me back to that situation, yes, I can remember things that she would say about it. And like you said, the smell, the feeling of it, or whatever like that. You might not even know what the whole situation was, but there are
Mm-hmm.
bits and pieces of it that will come back to you. So, yeah, how
Yeah.
do you, especially when it happens to children? Children have such a vivid imagination. I'm sure they would even kind of fantasize it away, like, no, that isn't what just happened. I'm not, you know what I'm
Well,
saying? I don't know how to put
yeah,
it in the
and I
right
think this
words,
is why
but
it's really important for people when they're speaking to, especially children, that you're talking to them, and you're talking to them in open-ended terms, because what you don't want is for any survivor to try and fill in the blanks, because they may not be there. And by
Right.
filling in the blanks, you may be creating a false narrative for yourself. And so if you don't remember everything, you don't remember everything. And it's especially important with kids. I forget the number off the top of my head, but the number of times that kids actually have to report being sexually abused before they're actually believed by somebody is very high. And it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. And people don't believe kids for a number of reasons. Oh, this kid always lies, or I know that neighbor and they're never going to do anything, or how could you accuse your dad of that? Or, female, you're accusing your teacher. Female and male doesn't happen. I mean, until more recently, we're getting it, that
Yeah.
yes, it does happen, and it does happen to adult males too. So it's so critical that we believe somebody, no matter their age, no matter their gender, no matter their sexual orientation. It can happen to literally anyone. And guess what? Anyone can be an abuser. Literally.
Yeah, there are no boogeymen.
No.
That's what my granddaughter's like about 3.5,
Mm-hmm.
and I was going through some of the preschool, for she's going to be going to pre-K next year. Some of the things that she needs to know before she goes, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the things is the stranger danger thing. And I thought to myself, I've got to really figure out how I'm going to broach the subject with her, because I don't want to scare her,
Right.
but I also don't want her to have think everybody is okay. But how do you say some people? It's like I don't have the words yet, to be able to really have that conversation. And I was actually kind of surprised, because I hadn't even thought about that. I mean, we keep her with us all the time, so it's like
Right.
we haven't had the situation yet where she's been with somebody out of one of our view. So
Yep.
I hadn't even thought that we need to do that, but I guess we need to have those conversations.
Well, I will say this about stranger danger. It did a real disservice to, I think, the sexual assault, I won't say movement, but to survivors, because it gave this appearance that those are the people that you have to be worried about, are the strangers in your life, right? You don't
Right.
don't take candy from somebody, don't go looking for a puppy dog with somebody. But actually, the true numbers are that upwards of 95% of victims know their abuser. So that's less
And
than
it's usually
five.
a trusted family member or family friend who,
Family member, family friend, little league coach, religious, somebody in your religious
yeah,
circle. They're known to you in
yeah,
one way or another, and they're able to gain not only generally the child's trust, but the parents' trust as well. Because when they have the parents' trust, then they're able to have the child alone. Um, that is, going to be one of the biggest things. So it really becomes, and I think it was important that you said, I don't have the words yet, because if we don't as adults have the words, how are we going to explain it to a kid so that they understand and can tell us when something's wrong? They have to have words to be able to say what is wrong. So when I had to go through this with my son when he was, of similar age, of course, I did talk about stranger danger, and we don't go with people that we don't know, even if they say, well, your mom or your grandmother told me you should come with me.
yeah,
We had basically what was like a safe word, and they had to know the safe word: chili pepper, dragon, pick something that she can remember. And will
yeah,
be, unless that person knows the code word, she can't go with them, and usually have it approved by another adult who's there. I mean, usually she's going to be either with a teacher or daycare,
yeah,
something of that nature. It's not going to be just going with somebody. But that was one way to say, if they, one trick that you can use is having a code word with somebody. the other thing is making sure that they know what their body parts are and not being afraid to use the words for your body parts, because kids need to know, and it's their body, and giving them autonomy over their own body as early as possible. So even though she's only 3 and she may need help washing her back, have her wash her privates herself. Have her know, where they are, and that it is for basically health reasons that anybody is going to be checking, whether that's mommy, whether that's dad, whether that's grandma, who, he was same situation, was with grandma all day, instead of daycare. Unless there is a health reason or the doctor, there's really no reason for us to be looking around or checking around or touching,
Right.
So letting them know that it's okay to say no to adults, because a lot of us were raised as an adult tells you to do something, you do it. It doesn't matter if it's your parent or your neighbor or your relative, but
Right.
they need to know that it's okay in certain situations to say no. And that if anybody ever tries to touch them in such a way, or just touches them in a way that makes them very uncomfortable,
Comfortable. Yeah.
you get that funny feeling. I would tell my son, if you get that funny feeling when somebody's, by you or hugging you or whatever, and it just, you really, you just, you come tell me. You let me know.
You know how, at least when I was growing up, when your relatives came over, for the holidays or whatever, anyway, and you're getting
Mm-hmm.
ready to leave, it was like, go give them a hug and,
Yep.
whatever. Now, see, with my granddaughter, she is very affectionate when she wants to be, not when somebody makes her. And
Mm-hmm.
we never say, oh, you better give me a hug or, anything like
Right.
that. I mean, I feel like children and dogs, animals, are very good judges of character. And I feel like if my dog doesn't like you or my granddaughter doesn't like you, there's something wrong with you. So I shouldn't like you either.
Right.
But
Right.
I'm never going to force her, into, well, you have to do this or that or whatever. No, I don't believe in any of that. But also, which is totally off topic, but my daughter, she's a school teacher. And so she has very strong opinions about how she wants to raise her, as far as, like, we don't do pink is only for girls and blue is for boys,
Oh, right. Right.
or
Yeah.
you're a girl, you play with the dolly and the boy plays with the truck.
100%
She has
right.
robots and
Yeah.
dinosaurs, and
Yeah.
I
You
mean,
you do
whatever
what's
she
interesting.
wants, we let her have. And
Right.
we never say, well, you're a girl, that's a boy, or anything like that. um, Eventually she will figure that, have to figure out, what she is. But as far as us being, you know
You like what you like, not because it's a
pigeonholing her, that
gender
this
role.
is only allowed
Mhm.
because you're a girl.
Right.
And we don't. But even like with my daughter, when she was growing up, I would see her do things that were definitely feminine traits, but not things that I did. So, not
Mhm.
something that she wasn't copying what mommy did. It was just a trait of her own coming
Mhm.
out, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, so it's
There
kind of like with my granddaughter, I don't want her to be a princessy, frilly girl or a tomboy, but I want her to be whatever it is she wants to be.
yeah,
And as she figures that out, I'm sure her likes and dislikes will come. But
exactly.
we've even had that
Exactly.
from people, like for her Christmas gift or her birthday present. Oh, well, what does she like? And my daughter will say, well, she likes dinosaurs, or she likes cars and trucks and robots, and
Mhm.
but she also likes stuffed animal and dolls and whatever. But then they'll be like, well, I would never buy a girl a truck. Well, she happens to like them. She likes,
Yeah, she's interested in them.
especially the remote control ones. But that I
Yeah.
think is because she runs them into the wall and stuff.
But it's fun, but
Well, yeah,
still,
it's fun. So who
absolutely.
cares? It
My
it
son went to kindergarten with black nail polish on one, or dark blue nail polish on one day. And I said, okay. I said, I'm fine with it, and he's just like, there are rockers who do it, right? There's adult guys that are out there doing it.
yeah,
Why not? My military father had a little bit of a connection fit, but that's beside the point. But I said, you need to be aware some kids might not understand a boy wearing nail polish, so you can point out, the different rock and roll people, rappers and people who do it. And that kind of made a little bit of a difference with them. But I don't even think anybody said anything. But, you never know if a teacher or somebody is going to say it. So I had to prepare him for,
right.
okay, as long as you're all right with, and he's just like, oh yeah, mom, and I'm like, okay, that's cool, and he figured out where he fit into life and what he liked. But I think that with kids, as far as sexual assault essay, it needs to be, you have to talk to them continually. It has to be a continuous conversation, because what your granddaughter is going to understand at 3 is going to be different than she's going to be able to verbalize at 6. And
Right.
again, they need the words to be able to do that. So we have to keep having this conversation with them as time goes on. And that even morphed into, as my son got to be 8, 9 years old, and people are like, oh, you think you're talking to him about like sex a little early? And I'm like, no, because he has access to it on his phone. I said, and so do his friends. So even if I restrict, he didn't get a phone till a little bit later, but even if I was to restrict things on the computer or on the phone, others have access to it, right? So we started talking about pornography very, very young.
Yeah.
And this is what helped him make decisions as he eventually looked at it, because they're human beings, right? Guys and girls. And he made the decision that this is not for me, because before I made a series on kids and porn, and I went to him and I asked him about it. I said, do you watch it, or what do you think, or whatever? And he looked me straight in the eye. He was about 17. He looked me straight in the eye and he said, I don't watch that stuff, Mom. That really F's with your mind. And so he was able to discern between what was going on with what he was watching, with what reality really should have been, because of all the conversations that we had had.
Right.
And I just had this conversation with another colleague whose son's in 9th grade, and he's just starting to talk to him about this. And he had no idea about the potential dangers of the exposure of kids to this kind of material so young, that if they really get into it and get into rabbit holes with it, and by into it I mean consistently watching it over the years, it can really warp their sense of what they think is right and wrong with pleasing somebody. And so all of this morphs into, you can see then how we have, when I was growing up, date essay was kind of becoming the big thing. Well, I can see that happening all over again, as you have this generation who has been raised with access to harder core material, not understanding, especially if they're not spoken to about boundaries and consent and all these types of things. So, the conversation just morphs and changes over the years, and it changes from somewhat of other people doing to them, to them either protecting themselves with boundaries and what they're doing with others.
Right. And I was raised very sheltered. And when I was finally an adult and out on my own, I did not know about a lot of things. And to me, it was harder to learn things having not had it part of my life.
You have no
Growing
context
up.
for it.
Yeah.
There's,
So with my
yeah,
daughter, to me, it's like, you want to raise your child up until they're 18 or even after college or whatever. And then you expect them to be an adult and take care of their life. Well, they have to be able to take care of their whole life, all of it. So
hmm
you can't leave pieces out, you know. So to me it was like I want there to be open line of communication. I want her to understand that these things are perfectly normal and natural, and you're going to go through these things,
yep,
and this is the way that you're going to respect yourself and respect other people and all of that. So when she did start having any feelings or experiencing anything, it was perfectly natural for her to come and say, "Well, Mom, what about this?" Or
hmm
and never once was like, "I can't talk to you about this."
right,
And
right,
even when she had her first serious boyfriend, we had sat down and had a long conversation, and I told her, I said, I mean, it's like they say, you teach people how to treat you. So
yeah,
you have to figure out how you want to be treated in the beginning. And
hmm
then you teach them how to treat you so that it is the way that you want it to be. So a lot of those kind of things I'm okay with, I think, when they're older. But I don't remember at 3, I don't remember how we handled that with her. And so now that I'm thinking, okay, I need to handle this with my granddaughter, which the first conversation I have to have is with my daughter. Let her,
yeah,
so that she realizes, okay, this is coming. We've got to figure out how to handle this,
right,
situation. Um, but I can just see how it's all of it is, you get a warped sense of what is normal or natural for yourself with all of these things. And then you become an adult and now you're out there interacting with other people. And it's no wonder that people have all the problems that they have, because the basic information is distorted, because it wasn't dealt with in a way it should have been dealt with. But now I think with channels like yours and people who are willing to say there shouldn't be a stigmatism to this, we
hmm
should teach people about these kind of things and how to deal with things so that it doesn't happen. In other words, it's just going to continue happening and we're not going to get anywhere. At least I think if people will talk about it and not be down on people who, don't have all the answers or can't remember everything, but they know something happened.
right,
Let that be enough. Can't you just be compassionate towards that person and say,
hmm
I'm sorry that something happened? You know, what can I do to help you or whatever? Instead of people being like, well, yeah, I don't think that, happened, or like you said, so and so isn't that kind of person. How do you know if you don't live with somebody? And even living with somebody, you don't always
hmm
know them,
yeah. You don't want to believe it. Let me tell you a couple of things from my story. I think kind of point on this. Um, as you alluded to, so when I was 6 to about 8, there was some abuse that was occurring with me with somebody who was about 13, 14 years old. And I never thought I had a right to feel like I was a victim of abuse because it was another kid, right? So, and then my first one I didn't really remember. So I thought, am I just playing the victim? Am I just, making this all up I'm making something up in my mind that's really not a big deal. That's really not anything, that I don't have a right to be feeling this way. So I always had this internal struggle going on between, on the one hand, feeling bad because something happened to me, and another feeling like I didn't have a right to feel bad because nothing really did happen to me, because I didn't remember
That
it, or it was
must have
just
been
another kid, and
horrible.
kids play with each other, kids play doctor, whatever. That talk I did get. And I got the how sex actually happens talk, and I got the stranger danger talk. That was it. That was the limit of our conversations that I remember anyway. So I struggled with that for a long time until I was in college and I got into therapy. And the first therapist told me that if you feel like one, you are one. If you feel like a victim, you are one, because something happened. You're feeling that. We don't feel that way about sexual issues for no reason when we're a kid. There's no reason I should be able to explain certain things or know about how certain body parts really work as a young child, as a 6-year-old, as a 4-year-old. So these are some other clues that give you ideas that a kid is really telling the truth. So knowing what to look for in a child who is being abused is really critical as well, because looking at that then from a parent or a grandparent standpoint, and being able to see, I know what's normal for this child, and now this child is acting differently. They're more withdrawn. They don't want to go with that particular babysitter. They don't want to be left with that particular babysitter. They're really begging you to do something else. They're not saying why, but they're pulling into themselves, or they're acting out more than normal, or their grades are slipping, or anything that is really changing, that is different. We need to be cueing into those things. And knowledge is one of those things, that if they're acting or demonstrating that they have knowledge that is ahead of them for their age. So kids need to know that older kids can abuse them as well, that this isn't just an adult situation, that it can be an older cousin, that it can be an older sibling. And in my case, it was a neighbor, an older neighbor. So it's really important that kids are exposed to all of these ideas and these concepts, and that they understand and have a context to be able to talk when something happens. And as you say, in terms of believing them, I was 11 when I first disclosed to my mother, and my mother didn't have words to be able to talk about it. And it certainly wasn't something she wanted to believe happened to me, So she was just like, and this was in regards to a friend, the son of one of their friends. And I was 9, 10, 11. He was 21, 22, something like that. It should not have been, nothing should have gone on. Yeah. And my mom said, he's probably just seeing how far he can get with you. And I was like,
if you were 19, maybe.
And 15 or something, right? But I was like,
not at 11. No.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember the stair that I was on. At our house, we were going the way to the basement, and we were on the basement set of stairs. And I just remember stopping in my tracks and being like, and I wanted to say more, but I didn't know what else to say. I didn't know that I should keep disclosing. I didn't know that I should keep telling somebody. I didn't know that I didn't have that validation that something really was wrong, that it wasn't just somebody.
Her reaction to it, it didn't signal you to say, okay, this is wrong,
I thought, I'm making a big deal out of this, even though it feels weird and I don't really want to. I guess this is just how dating goes, type of things. I mean, I know I wasn't dating, but I thought, okay, this is how things are in relationships, whatever. You've got to set your boundaries. You've got to say no, and I'm saying no, but okay. So that set me into a certain pattern. And not just that, but there were several instances, there's this thing called re-victimization. Once you're victimized once, you're a lot more likely to be victimized the second time. You become a vulnerable candidate, and especially after that, then I didn't really know how to say no in a real affirmative way, and so things would keep happening, and I never bothered to say anything to anybody. I could have got my parents' next door neighbor, arrested when he exposed himself to me after babysitting one time, I mean, here's a grown man. I'm 13, 14 years old. And he's like, hey, want to learn something? And I'm like,
Oh my God.
I didn't even collect money. I just walked out the back door and I walked next door to my house and just was like, never babysitting over there again. Okay. Thank you very much. And it just goes to show you how prolific this is in our society. This is not a one-off. This is not an anomaly. I was just looking up stats today, and in the United States, a person will be sexually assaulted every 68 seconds. And I've heard 73 seconds too. So, average it around 70 seconds.
Once a minute.
And that's a person. Every 9 minutes, it's a child.
Yeah, that's
the U.S., Canada, North America, basically the U.S. Sometimes 1 in 3, sometimes they see 1 in 4 women will be sexually assaulted in their lifetime. 1 in 6 men will be. Worldwide, for kids, 1 in 8 females and 1 in 11 males will be sexually assaulted by the time they're 18. Those are worldwide average statistics. Obviously, they're higher in some areas, some countries than others, but that goes to show you just how common. I mean, about 20% of the population is going to be sexually assaulted as a child before they reach 18. 20% of our kids. So this is not a one-off. This isn't the boogeyman. This isn't the stranger. This isn't we have to, as a society, as we become more fractured, right? Don't reprimand my child. It used to be, the neighbor could hit you upside the head if you were doing something wrong, right? Now right. It's just like, don't you dare even say no to my kid. Well, that's where this village idea is really important, because if you notice, the baseball coach is always given that extra attention to that one kid. Maybe it's usually that person, they're giving them the ride to and from as well. There may be some questions that need to be asked. It may be that person is the salt of the earth. Yeah. And that happens. But you know what?
I think we're too trusting.
We want to believe people are not like this.
Yes.
And no one, if you're going to go up to them and say, you're not going to go up to somebody and accuse them, first off, right? Because they're just going to say no anyway. But you do want to be speaking to the kids. And you do want to be paying attention. Because oftentimes it's the kids who... It is going to be the kids who are the most vulnerable, the kids who are least outspoken, the kids who have the broken home, who are in single parent families or families where there's a lot of strife going on, that are the most vulnerable of our population. And so keeping that extra eye out for your neighbor or your nephew or, whoever it is. So just being aware of the kids in our universe. And I have to say, by having this conversation, the kids actually saved one of the kids in my son's circle, because they were seeing something that the kid themselves didn't really want to see. It was a grooming process, and it was before anything had happened. But the moment that person made their move, that kid went, all the kids are right about this guy. I'm out of here. Yeah. Right. And so it's because the kids had the words. The kids knew what to look for. So it's not just an adult responsibility, but the kids won't know any of that if we don't talk to them. And if we don't have the words, they're not going to have the words.
I think, like, in my childhood, when I was growing up, our parents, you're supposed to respect adults, your teacher, your pastor, the fireman, the police officer, all those things you would never suspect. And those are the people who, because they have the access and they're not being suspected. And so
Mhm.
the teachers, the coaches, those kind of things. And so now it's almost like you have to suspect everyone. You can't say, well, oh, this will be safe and this isn't safe. You kind of have to say everybody is off limits as far as my child or it goes until, but I don't know. I'm scared to death. I'm scared to death. She'll be at the same school that my daughter teaches at.
That's wonderful. I say
And the
trust,
other,
but verify.
yeah, the other teachers will know that her mama is there. But still, just the whole idea of everything that she's got to, you know, it's very
Kids
scary to me.
kids are savvy. This is the one thing that I really learned with my son, and him growing up. And honestly, they are our first line of defense, because if they know that they can say no, and they know that if they disclose, if something did happen, God forbid, that they're going to be believed, that they're not going to be in trouble, that it's not their fault, that there's no shame on them, they are going to be more likely to come to us, especially if we continually say, you come to us, talk to us. Again, it can't be a one and done conversation, because kids are going to file things away, but then there's things that are going to be just kind of thrown by the wayside, right? It has to be a continuing conversation. And I
Well,
know
and
sometimes
as
I'd even have my son be like, I know, mom, it's
but
like,
don't you think too, as they age and mature, that it needs to be expanded upon, for such different situations that they'll have
absolutely.
to deal with. You can't just do it. Well, I had that talk with them once. No,
Nope.
it can't be just one time.
Yep. Now
And
you're
you
in
have to
dance
have
class,
that
or
dialogue. You
now you're
know,
doing t-ball, or now you've got another coach, and they need to know that it's okay to tell, no matter who the person is. They need to know that it can be absolutely anybody. It could be the pastor, it could be the Boy Scout leader or the Girl Scout leader, because it's just as important that the boys know that it can be men who might try, but that it can be females. And people say, well, female predators are on the rise. Nah, I don't think that they're necessarily on the rise. I think
more.
disclosure is on
Yeah,
the rise.
yeah.
So people are talking about it more. And it has to, it has to be okay, especially, I think for boys in certain, who come from certain cultures where it's, man or men, and it can be very difficult for them to then admit that something happened if they're not being given the go ahead by their parents or by their caregiver to say, it's okay, it's not on you, there is no fault, there is no shame, you're no less of a boy, you're no less of a man. The person, the perpetrator, it's on them. They're less of a person because they did this to you.
And also
So
to make sure that they know it doesn't change the way they feel about themselves because it did happen. I mean,
exactly.
of course, the main thing, try to prevent it from ever happening to them,
Yep.
but it can be in so many different degrees
Mm-hmm.
of things that even though it might not be as bad or as completely damaging, it could still, even just somebody making them feel uncomfortable could
Mm-hmm.
damage them, you know. So,
I say trauma is trauma is trauma. It affects people similarly, no matter what the degree. We can look objectively at a situation and say, "Oh, they were just touched on their chest," versus somebody else who was penetrated. Okay, and we could say one is worse than the other. Well, they're both traumas,
yeah,
and they're both going to affect the child very similarly. And it doesn't matter whether it's a physical trauma or an emotional trauma. Our brain doesn't know the difference. Our brain processes those traumas exactly the same.
Right.
And in an MRI scans, they can't tell the difference. So the trauma is no less because it happens at one level or another, to the child. And that's something we as adults have to understand so that the child knows that what you went through, if it's traumatic to you, it's traumatic to you. And to not make, well, it could have been worse. We just
Yeah.
talked about this a little bit, on things, thank goodness it wasn't worse. And you may be saying that to yourself as a kind of, okay, I got to deal with this, but thank goodness it was. But if you're verbalizing that, and then the survivor is hearing you say that, they're going to internalize that. So we have to be very careful what we say to people that we're trying to support.
I have a very good friend who was dating a guy, and her teenage granddaughter was staying with her. And the girl told me that she was uncomfortable around this boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing had happened, but she just was uncomfortable. She tried to tell my friend, and my friend just didn't want to hear it, I guess.
Yeah.
And so
common.
I told my friend, I don't know what's going on. Neither one of us knew this guy that well.
Right.
And I told her, I said, don't leave him there alone. And if
Right.
you have to, make sure she's got my number and tell her to call me and I'll come and get her. She can come over to
100%.
my house, or whatever. And I told the girl too, I said, put my phone number in your phone. If you ever need me, you call me and I'll come and get you. We'll go shopping or whatever. He won't have to know that you're not wanting to be there with him,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. We'll just go and hang out or whatever. Anyway, long story short, he ended up raping her.
Mm.
Now, then my friend was like, I should have listened. And I'm like, she tried to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
She told someone else. She told me. I told you.
Mm-hmm.
It's
burying our head in the sand and not wanting to see the ugly. And unfortunately, the ugly comes to our doorsteps at times.
After the fact, she made the girl feel like it was her fault. She shouldn't have dressed the way she dressed. She shouldn't have been a teenage girl,
A heart breaks.
So I feel like she was victimized twice.
She was.
Not just from the assault, but also from the way it was handled.
Yeah.
So
100%. That's, I had this conversation with somebody who's very, very old school, right? And would very much be you don't dress like that and walk down the street and expect nothing's going to happen. And I said, okay, hold on. Here is where you need to make the cut. Is it wise to do that? No, it's not. Should I be able to do that though? Because they should be able to control their impulses. Yes, I should. Now, reality is probably not going to happen, right? But I should be able to, because to say that, well, men can't control their urges, or, it was too provocative, or what, all BS, right? All BS. So I think that where it gets to some people is they're just like, I can dress however I want to, and I can walk down the street, and I can do this, and I can do this. And that strikes people the wrong way. And I think that we do need to kind of have a little bit of I don't want to say a happy medium, but a realistic, pragmatic approach to it and say, listen, should you be able to? 100%. Is that the reality we live in? Not necessarily.
Right.
So is there a personal responsibility we need to take on? Yeah, there is, as guys and girls, whether it's making sure that we're not, totally blackout drunk at a party. Now, should we be able to, if you're 21 or whatever, be able to party and do this and get drunk and pass out on a couch at a party and expect not to be, SA'd? Yeah, you should be able to.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's not necessarily what happens. So make sure you have friends with you. Make sure your friends take you home. Make sure you have people checking on you. And I always told my son, I said, you're going to be bigger than some other people. Make sure that you're watching out for others. If they're too drunk and they're going off with somebody, do they really want to be with that person? You need to look out for your fellow person, even if you're not, friends with them per se. And again, that's that village idea of us really
Right.
looking out for just each other and not go, well, it's not my concern.
Mm-hmm.
I think it should be our concern.
Yeah. I mean, just the fact that we're human and we should be there for other humans, But like with my friend, she had to come to realize it was her. I mean, yes, he did it, but it was her fault that it actually happened. She could have prevented it from happening if she had not left them there, gave him access to be there. And luckily she got the girl therapy, and
Mm-hmm.
now she realizes that it wouldn't have mattered what the girl did, you know that she didn't
Right.
cause it to happen or whatever. um, but the girl will never be the same.
No,
you
no,
know
absolutely not. And the mom fostered a situation. For me personally, I always say the fault lies with the abuser and the abuser alone. While other people can be enablers, fosters, by either putting their head in the sand or actively saying, don't provoke him or whatever, by saying
yeah,
things like that.
yeah,
But let's never forget who is truly at fault. And this is the abuser, whether they're male or female, whether the
mm.
person whether the survivor is a child or an adult. You know, it
Well, and I
it can
think that
happen to
that's
anyone.
the whole thing, is that you don't know who it could be, what the
Hmm.
situation could be.
Yeah.
And as adults, we should be able to protect ourselves, to be our own first line of defense, that we're not going to put ourselves in that kind of situation or whatever. Not that it doesn't still happen. But children, they don't have the wherewithal to even be able to protect themselves. They don't even know to be afraid and to protect
Unless we
themselves.
talk to them.
Right. But that's what I'm
And
saying. So many parents are not parenting their children anymore.
no.
And my daughter sees this at school all the time. She teaches third graders.
Mm,
And there's just so many things that these kids are dealing with already at 8 or 9 years old,
yeah.
you know, because they're raising themselves. They're not even being raised. They're just growing.
Yeah.
And so many things that they don't have any guidance or anybody that cares about them or anything like that. And so they don't care about themselves either, because it's not, that's not how they're being raised. I don't know how she does it, because I couldn't do it. It would break my
It's
heart every day seeing
yeah, me
kids
too.
like
Me
that.
too. And that's why, when my son in his school, when they were going through, drugs was a big thing. They had Project Charlie and it was the whole drug thing and whatever. And I said, okay, so what are they telling you about anything? It was good touch, bad touch. And I'm like, okay, don't let someone. There wasn't much of an explanation beyond that. There's good touch and there's bad touch. And what does that feel like? And it needs to be a continuing conversation, right? And B, we've got to get more specific with the kids. And if I do not want to say that it's going to be that it's the school's responsibility. It's not. It's the parents' responsibility. But reality is it's not happening in a lot of homes because people either shy away from the subject or simply don't have the tools or the education to be able to tell them even if they wanted to.
Right.
So this is something with my channel that, by giving the education, it's not only for the survivors who are out there, it's for everybody. And I would love to be able to eventually, do talks with schools and be able to speak about this on an age appropriate level, and how do we have those conversations as the kids grow older so that they know this could be their dad, this could be their uncle, this could be their pastor. This could be their baseball coach. They need to know that these people that they trust, that it's not just a stranger. And by just saying there's good touch, bad touch, someone, it's like, but they're really trusted. Well, that may be. And everybody in the universe may trust them. But if you know that they're not to be trusted because of a bad touch, then you need to tell. And if the first person you tell doesn't believe, you need to keep telling until someone does believe you. And I mean, that's hard. That's hard. How many adults would want to keep telling until somebody believes
I
them?
can't imagine it if it was one of your own parents. I just cannot imagine how that poor child would be able to wrap their head around that.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not just talking about SA, any kind of abuse, physical abuse, or anything like that. For it to be the person who's supposed to love you and protect you and take care of you, and that's the person that's doing it to you. I don't know how they.
And that's where sexual violence and physical violence and love can intersect and can mess up kids.
Yeah.
A lot, because if they're growing up with that, they can have a warped sense. It has to do with our attachment bonds and how we relate to our parents. And, if there's neglect on top of that, you've just got trauma, compounding trauma. And that's a really difficult situation, because most kids, by the time they're at least 8 or 9 years old, they understand the ramifications of, if I'm to make a allegation against this person, that they're probably going to be removed from our lives. And yeah, that may splinter our family, regardless of if it's a direct parent or if it's somebody a little bit farther outside that circle.
Yeah.
It can cause a lot of damage, and a lot of kids don't want to do that. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that it happens. But the thing about it is, and they've done studies in regards to this, and communities where they've really made a huge effort on education, and it can significantly, I mean, like high double digits, drop the amount of assaults that occur if people are just educated on what happens, who it can happen to, how it can happen, and have the words to be able to use, whether they're kids or they're adults. So, and again, and the more we talk about it, the more we destigmatize it, that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that person who has been SA'd in their life. They've got some extra trauma to deal with. You know what? You might have been beaten as a kid. Guess what? Your trauma's the same as theirs. Why should they be made to feel any different because they've suffered a trauma that is of a sexual nature?
Yeah.
So,
and I'm sure most people have not just had the one thing happen to them. It very well, with the family dynamic or whatever, could be physical abuse as well as sexual abuse. I mean, I have known people who had, mental, emotional, physical, sexual, had all of it.
Yeah. And it's a lot of unpacking to do, and it takes them It can take them years to deal with it, but the sooner they get into therapy and the sooner they are able to bring it to light, the better they will be off in light. The worst thing that we can do is stuff that stuff down and pretend it doesn't exist and say, nope, I've compartmentalized that. I've dealt with it very neatly. Because guess what? You go on with your merry little life, and that stuff is just seeping out of that compartment that you put it in. And it's just getting into other areas of your life. And you don't realize it. So you don't realize how your actions are affected by it because you think you've put it away.
Right.
You can't. You cannot successfully compartmentalize it so it does not affect your life.
Well, now this happened to me actually. I woke up this morning, and I had this dream last night where two different situations with two different people, but it was like the situation and the person were mixed. In other words, this situation happened with this person and this situation with that person, but it was like the people were reversed.
Right.
The situations, I remember the situations, but not with those people or not in that time frame in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that the situations made me feel were rejected and criticized.
Mm-hmm.
Both situations, I felt the same exact way from both of them, totally different situations. And both situations I felt like I had dealt with and I wasn't worrying about them anymore.
Right.
But in my subconscious, it
Mm-hmm.
still had stuff to work out. And even though it got it
Exactly.
up,
Yeah.
feeling that I had when I woke up was still of the rejection and the
That
criticism,
criticism.
humiliation, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Anyway, so
It can take a while. And
I was
with this, huh?
I said I was like I didn't understand how I could have that going on in my subconscious when consciously I felt like it was taken care of, but it really
Yeah.
is
There
never
was something that needed to be dealt with
right,
there.
right.
And with not only that, but with also the stuff that you say, I don't remember. I blocked out a lot of things. And
Mhm.
people later on in life will just all of a sudden remember you. So you speak with your sister and you remember. And the brain has an incredibly complex way of protecting ourselves, right? And
Mhm.
it will only allow those memories to surface when it feels like it's safe to do so. So they're coming at a time because the brain is like, okay, you can handle it, or the situation out there is okay enough for this to come up right now. And other memories may stay down, and it's your brain is going to protect yourself. And I said today in my live, and I love this quote, that we humans, we are wired for connection, and trauma rewires us for protection. And it is so true. But we can also rewire our brains back again,
Mm.
because our brains are so elastic that as we heal the trauma, we heal our bodies. And a lot of physical ailments that we have, chronic ailments, can actually be healed through healing the trauma, because they are caused by the suppression of all of that stuff, and it actually physically damages our cells. So you can get autoimmune diseases, you can get your chronic pain, fibromyalgia, ADHD. I mean, there's this whole slew of things that can be caused by shoving all that stuff down and just damaging ourselves from the inside out. So the body is amazing, amazing piece of equipment, and it can take a lot, but we can also heal ourselves, I think, a lot more than we realize.
Well, and I was, just didn't know what to think, and so I talked to someone and they helped me to understand that it's going to work its way up and out for me to deal with, whether I want to do that or not. And even
Mm-hmm.
though I might think that I've dealt with it, if it's not really dealt with, in other words, you can't suppress things and try to go on, because it's still in there and it's going to
Mm-hmm.
bubble up and come out. And then you have
Yep.
to look at it. And it's better just to go ahead and look at it and deal with it as it comes out than to say, oh no, go back in there. I don't want to talk about that right
I don't
now.
want
Yeah.
to. I don't want to deal
But it
with
was
you. I don't
just,
want to think about
I'm
you.
sure I've dreamed these kind of dreams before,
Yeah.
but it was just so weird. Not only did I remember what I dreamt, but when I like woke up in the middle of it, kind of like I'm having these feelings like something just happened right now, you know.
Oh yeah.
It was so strange to me, and I thought, wow, this is not what I expected to be
Have you ever
happening.
woken up angry? Like, I
Not
mean, just
not angry, but I've woken up like in a bad mood. Like, why am I'm just I would say to my daughter, I can't be around anybody right now because I
right.
don't even like myself. It's like I can't be trusted not to say something horrible to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I have to just.
Something happened at night. I mean, I this was probably 3, 4 weeks ago, and I woke up. I mean, I was pissed. I mean, I was angry, pissed. I wanted to rip somebody's head off. I was just mad. I don't know why. I don't know what it was about, but I had to work through that all day to be able to calm down and come to a place and go, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, but my brain's telling me I need to work through something. So we're going to have to figure it out. And the subconscious is amazing. We store a lot there, and it sees all, and it
Yeah.
keeps all.
I've
I
been
just
I've
wanted
been
to comment real quick. Indigo says, I hate it when people say, just leave, um, as if it should be that easy. And she said, actually, when you leave, it's the most dangerous moment that there is. And she's 100% right. The first day or so after you leave an abusive situation is the most dangerous for you. And it's when somebody is most likely to be injured. So, if you ever are leaving a dangerous situation, whether it's because of physical or sexual violence, you do definitely need to make sure that you have your exit plan in place and that you have people who you are surrounded with during that, at least that first few weeks.
and I've heard that a lot when someone is in that kind of situation. Well, why didn't they just leave? Maybe they didn't have anywhere to go. Maybe they didn't have any money to take care of themselves. Maybe they were scared the person would track them down and hurt them. It's like there are a million reasons
Yeah,
why someone might stay, but it's not for us to judge that.
right.
I mean, everybody's got to do whatever they have to do to survive.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You might not agree with it. You might think, oh, well, I would have done this or I would have done that. It's not you that it happened to, though.
Sometimes it's the devil. I mean, leaving can be
Oh,
scarier than
yeah,
staying. At least they know what
yeah,
they've got. And sometimes it does come down to that, well, I knew it was going to be me or him, or it was going to be one of the kids and her, you know, that finally, makes somebody, take that leap. And sometimes it's a total leap of faith. Because yeah, one of the key things that abusers of that nature do is isolate their victims, and so they often don't have access to resources, whether that's people, places, or money. And when you've got kids involved, that adds an extra wrinkle onto things. So, not all domestic shelters are as safe as they want to be. And in a lot of places, there aren't domestic shelters for men. They just would put you in the homeless shelter, because they don't want the men with the women, right, at the shelter. So they're just, it can get extra tricky when you're a man and you're trying to get away, because unfortunately, there are women that are of that level, who will want to see the demise of their partners. So it can be tricky. The best thing though is to reach out for help in one form or another. There are a lot of resources out there that can get you to people who have the right resource for your situation. But it can be hard.
But then again, so you've got to tell somebody, and that's a hard thing for a lot of people to even be able to bring themselves to even admit it to themselves enough to tell somebody else that it's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was in an alcoholic marriage for 8 years, and here I am, a successful professional, and nothing I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to parent my son with him. I didn't know how. It was a real struggle, and my son needed to enter school, and it was my desire to see him be in the same school from start to finish, because I moved all the time and I wanted that stability for him, that made my decision finally to leave. It's tough. It's real tough. So yeah, we have to lead with kindness in our hearts, and not judge, because we don't know what somebody's situation is. And even when my son would come home from school, especially middle school, right? That's the age everyone's kind of finding themselves, figuring things out. They're the meanest to each other, and be like, so-and-so has this, and so-and-so has this, and so-and-so. I said, they may have all the toys in the world, but they may be given all those toys because they're not given much love.
True.
Or maybe the love that they're given is in the form of a fist. And I would actually say this, I would talk to my son about this. We do not know what happens to this person beyond what you see.
Doors. Yeah.
You see what you
know.
see at school and what they present. You have no idea what their lives are actually like. So keep that in check, when you're looking at somebody. Just keep looking at yourself, keep looking at your friends, and who do you want to be with. And I like to think that it made a difference. PJ wishes Kathy O'Brien has a book that on healing that really helped her. I don't know of the book, but you guys can either reach out to PJ's Wish, or I'm sure look up Kathy O'Brien and mental health, and something will pop up by that. If you want to know more about trauma and the body and how that connection goes, particularly from a scientific standpoint and health issues and whatever, I highly recommend reading anything or podcasts by Dr. Gabor Mate. Mate, Mate is actually his last name. And Peter Levine, Dr. Peter Levine, both of them are excellent. The Body Keeps the Score, the book by Bessel van der Kolk, is really, like I said, is the seminal work in kicked this all off in saying, listen, there's more to PTSD than just the soldiers coming home from war. That's where they first got the name for it. And then they looked at it and said, there seems to be some other people in society that are suffering from this. Maybe there's something else here. So Indigo says she shared her story recently and about some memories that came back, and it was confirmed. Yeah, that can happen. And I had that an aunt-in-law had some memories that resurfaced when a sister, same as when a sister asked her about something, and she had blocked all of that out, and then all of a sudden the floodgates, kind of opened for her as well. But again, I encourage all of you to embrace these memories, because it is only through unpacking them that we will heal. And it can be scary and it can be difficult, but your brain is telling you it's okay. Your brain is telling you it's an okay time to remember this. So that means that you can be prepared. You can get through this. Reach out to people who have been through something similar, whether it's through having an actual therapist, a professional therapist, which I highly recommend, but I know not everyone can afford it or has access to one.
Right.
And really the next best thing are communities such as this, where we're just filled with people who have been there and get it. And I'm sure that you'll connect with people.
Yeah,
And I knew it was true. Yeah.
There's a lot of things that, and this has been about, let me think now, almost 10 years since I started really talking to my sister and really looking, trying to look at things. But up until that, if you asked me, how was your childhood? I would have said I had a fantastic childhood. I mean, there was just, and the way that my sister she didn't even know that I didn't remember, that I didn't know
right.
that I felt that way. And
oh, wow.
It came to be that my mom was going to come and live with us, or not with us, but in the same town. And my sister said, "Are you sure that you want to do that?" And I said, "Well, I haven't lived close to her in 25 years, because she'd always lived near my sister. And my sister was retiring and moving to Florida, and my mom didn't want to be in like a retirement type thing. So here I'm in Georgia, and I'm like, well, come to Georgia then, Anyway, my sister tried to make me realize what I was getting myself into. But again, I didn't know,
Yeah.
And then when everything went haywire, my sister said, that's why I asked you those things and why I was trying to talk to you before you did that, because I knew what you were getting yourself into, because she had the memories and she had always been in contact with my mom,
Right. So, but she didn't know that you were a blank slate in regards to that.
I didn't remember any of that. Yeah. And so when she said, well, you know how mom is, and you know what she does, and and I was like, well, yeah, and me thinking, why are you being so hard on my mother? I love my mother. Why would you, And so I looked at it that because my sister had been there by my mom and, looking out and helping, taking care of my mom, that she just was disgruntled.
Yeah, because of that kind of caregiver fatigue, a little bit type of thing.
Yeah, I didn't have any reason to think anything else,
Right. Yeah.
And so when I did start actually saying, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And I started talking to my sister, and my sister realized, she's like, you really don't remember.
And you're like,
and I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about,
Right.
But then the more we talk, and that's one thing that narcissists will do, is they won't let you be close to somebody else that they're also abusing, because you might compare notes and you might figure it out. And then two against them would be, So when my sister and I finally realized that, hey, we don't hate each other. We've not really communicated. We've listened to what mom has said about each other, to each other. And so when we finally started communicating and realizing, it was like, oh my goodness, no wonder.
A whole new world opened up.
All of the things that I thought I knew about my sister were not true because it's what my mom had told me. Not, I never bothered to ask my sister herself because it sounded logical what my mom would say,
Right,
you know.
right, right.
And why would I not believe what my mother
I
said?
was just gonna
You
say,
know?
right, and it's your mom
So
telling you.
yeah, high moon over Miami. So it at first it was all, and then it was like a lot of the things that I have struggled with my entire life, like low self esteem, um,
Mhm,
and not caring about myself, and things like that,
mhm.
being a people pleaser, and all of these things started making me realize that there's a reason I am the way I am.
Yep.
There's a recording going off in my head that is my mother
Mhm.
saying, and I'm buying into it and believing her. And it wasn't until my sister said, you don't have to believe that stuff. She
Right.
lied to you. You are not the things that she said and did to you. And
Yeah.
so my sister helped me a lot, but only to the point where her way of dealing with it is just, let's not talk about it. It's in the past.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I can't get it in the past without little things popping up. And then I'm like, oh, I know what this is. This is not
Right.
coming from me. This is
Mhm.
something else stemming from that. So
Absolutely.
I've been actively trying to work through it.
That's
Whereas my
wonderful.
sister is like, well, we just won't talk about it and it'll be
Yeah.
okay. But
Yeah.
then if my mom contacts any of us, or like on her birthday, or anything, my sister will, bring it up then. And I'm like,
Mm.
I thought you didn't want to talk about that situation,
Right.
you know. But
Yeah.
and we went totally no contact with her. And her whole thing is, I wish you would tell me what I did, you know. Because I don't know why you don't like me anymore. And then because I was the last one, she'd already had it out with my sister, and she already had it out with my brother, but I was
Mhm.
the last holdout. And then when we had our issues, the three of us decided to go no contact with her. But because I was the last one, then it's my fault that they don't talk to her either.
Right,
So
right,
what did
right.
I do to them to make
Mhm.
them not like her anymore? So I'm the
Mhm.
one that she always contacts, um, wanting to know why, I've turned them against her, and all of that. So
Mhm.
they're both kind of like, they can just not think about it. And every time I think I'm to the point where, okay, I've got a grip on it now and I'm not going to let her bother me, and that I'll get a phone call, or something will come in the mail, or, whatever.
Right.
So she won't let go.
Mhm.
And I hate to say it, but she's just turned 92. And I would very much want to be there and be able to support my mother at this point in her life, but it is so toxic to my life
Yeah, yeah.
that I can't do it.
It's when
And
it comes to family, yeah, that is so hard.
people who have never had that situation, they don't understand, but it's your mother. I
Right.
understand it's my mother. And I love my mother, but
But
I don't like.
you love yourself more.
Right. And see, always before, I didn't love myself.
Yeah.
But now that I've figured that out, and now
Mhm.
that, and I've had a lot of people who don't like this person because I'm not that doormat anymore. And
Yeah.
I'm not a people pleaser
Mhm.
anymore. And I do take time for myself, and I do
Mhm.
set boundaries. People do not like boundaries. I've found that out.
The certain personalities do not like those boundaries, and again,
Yes,
you will find out real quick who will respect you and who
yes.
won't when you set them.
And so it's like the more I work on myself, the more resistance I feel from other people in my life. but I'm also getting to the point where I don't need, if they can't respect that, I don't need them in my life
Hmm.
because it's more about my life now,
Right.
you know.
Exactly.
So um, I would love to be able to be there and help her, but my birthday was like 2 weeks ago, and of
Yeah.
course I got a birthday card, and instead of saying happy birthday, it said, please tell me what I did, why you won't talk to me, and I'm like,
You guys all are probably like, we've told you 1,000 times.
and it's not because we have not told her, it's that she
Right.
does not want to hear us or
Yep.
admit
Yep.
what it is.
Yep. Exactly.
So
Hello,
and
Lucy. Abigail.
she's never going to admit it.
No, and it was like somebody was talking in I think it was Jimena's live today, that they had been able to, kind of clear the air with their dad. And I love my dad to death. But he is such that, a lot of things he did growing up, I understand them now, and I don't. They didn't come from an evil place or a bad place. He wasn't trying to um be a bad, he was doing what he thought he should be doing to make good people, right? And unfortunately, that's the military way, and that doesn't really work with kids, you know.
Yeah.
And you don't break them down to build them up, type of thing. And there isn't just one way to do things, especially when you're a kid. And you know but he didn't have the greatest role models when it came to that either, and he thought that the military was the best learning model that he had come across thus far. And so that's what, he implemented. And, my mom tried to soften that in her way. But they were very much two individual parents. They weren't parenting. They were very much parents. So it got a little crazy there, occasionally. And
Well, thankfully, I had a wonderful dad, and he knew that my mom had issues. I don't think he knew the extent of the issues
mhm.
because she was very much um, where, when he was in the room, she was totally different
Mm,
than when he left the room. My ex
right.
husband, she was the same way with my ex husband. And for years and years, my ex husband thought that I was making it all up and
Yeah.
that I was
Because to them,
crazy.
they're an angel. They're
Yeah,
great
because
people.
she was so good in front of him. And it wasn't until she lived with us, and it's kind of like they say, the mask
Yeah,
slips.
it does.
Um,
You can't
and
keep it up.
then
They can't
he,
keep it up 24/7.
yeah, and then he witnessed enough that then he could believe me, and then he was
Yeah,
sorry that
th-
he hadn't believed me.
that kernel of
But
truth.
when they don't believe you, it's almost like you believe you are going crazy. Like, okay,
Yeah,
maybe I
it's like, am
am.
I misinterpreting everything? You're
Yeah,
like, no,
maybe
there's so
I'm
much
just
there. I can't be misinterpreting all
yeah.
of it. Um,
So and then when, because she lived with us and my daughter was a teenager, she started doing a lot of the things that she had done to me to my daughter.
oh,
And my daughter, I had raised my daughter to be her own person,
mm-hmm.
and she did not put up with it, and
Good
she
for
let me
her.
know right away what was going on. And I was like, thank goodness that she's strong enough not to
Yeah,
let it affect her
absolutely.
the way I let it affect me. Although, too, mine started, from infancy. But anyway,
Right.
um, and that was the final straw when I
Hmm.
realized that if she stayed in our lives, that toxic thing would then affect my daughter as well. It was bad enough it had affected me and my siblings.
Right. You didn't want
I
that
couldn't let
influence
it
her.
affect my daughter.
Yeah.
So, um,
It's tough. It's tough.
And Sophia said something about, you're going to still, when she passes, you're going to grieve the relationship that you wish you had had with her. And
Hmm.
that's so true. I always say, I wish I had the mother I wanted to have instead
Right.
of the mother I had. And all I could think about when I was little is I want to grow up and I want to have babies and I want to be a mommy and I'm going to love my babies, and it was like everything I didn't get, I was going to make sure I gave them, So it's
Hmm.
like, even though I couldn't remember a lot of things that happened, I knew what it was wrong. I knew what was happening and that I shouldn't feel the way I felt about myself, but it was I couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, there was too much, and your body, your body wasn't at a point where it was going to be able to process all those memories, either. And so they came out at a time when you could. Um, Brian Lucas has made a comment here. He says that it happened with his brother. Where did it go? But it happened with his brother, and he tried to tell his mom, and his mom just wouldn't believe. So it's, you know, you're not alone. You're definitely not alone with that. Unfortunately, his brother has passed now. Indigo wanted to make a comment. It's re-traumatizing because the questions they ask you when you report puts the onus on just survivors, almost makes you feel ashamed to even go through it. Yeah, and I will say that it's not everywhere, of course, but since the 2000s, training has gotten better. Since 2010, training has stepped up even, I think, a better notch. A lot of it has been focused on kids and how to treat kids. It's slowly morphed into treating survivors differently and understanding how to talk to trauma survivors. And this is the case with trauma survivors, whether you're talking from physical violence, sexual violence, a natural disaster, the school shootings, all of this. The trauma is trauma is trauma. And people are going to react in very similar ways. And so, as long as these police officers and first responders and the court systems as well can get trained on how you need to talk to trauma survivors, um, it can make the person going through the system, it can make their lives so much easier. It can make them feel validated. It can make them feel supported versus making them feel victimized all over again. There is no reason that they should feel any shame or any guilt. It all goes on to the abuser. And I will say that till I die, that any of you who feel because of abuse that you have suffered, feel shame, feel guilt, please take that off like it's a coat, throw it down, and put it where it belongs. It is on the abuser and the abuser solely. I don't care if you were a child, adult. I don't care if you said yes to the abuse, if you were a wholehearted participant in the abuse. If we're classifying it as abuse, you couldn't consent. Whether that's because you were young, whether that's because you were coerced, whether that's because you were drunk or drugged, it goes on them, not you. And
And that's a
mhm,
shame that people have to feel shame and guilt
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
I think it's changed a lot too for our victims, that years ago, people didn't report it because the system was so, it's your fault, you did
yeah,
this, you did that, whatever. And so why would you report it? Why put yourself through that? And so you've got people that were never brought to justice for those kind of things. And
hmm,
I feel like that has changed some, but it's still not, it depends on the situation. There's probably people who are really really good at it, that
hmm,
support the victim and make it easy as they can for that to happen. And then I'm sure there's others that are still, you know, not even being helpful, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't report, you know.
Absolutely. And, there's still kind of some of the old way of thinking, that generation is still around. And depending on the geographical area that you're in, if the training hasn't gotten to you, or if you're in an incredibly conservative area, occasionally, those areas tend to be, you'll find less soft handling of the victims, but not always. And I'm not saying that, just because you're in a conservative area that there aren't good people there who want to take care of survivors. That's not the case. But it also can depend on, is the survivor male or female? Are they an adult or a child? That can make a difference as to whether or not the person who might be great and believe every child that comes across, but they've got a male victim, or a male victim who happens to be gay, and they were assaulted by another male, or they're heterosexual male who was assaulted by an adult female. Their beliefs may just kind of clash with that a little bit. And so there's still a lot of learning to be done and still a lot of training to be done, but it certainly is better. I feel like we really see a leap, like every 20 years, you kind of see where that leap has gone. So from the 80s to the 2000s, from 2000s to 2020, and it will continue, but it's only going to continue with education. And that's why I'm so passionate about it and about talking about it, because they're only as good as the training that they've received. Right. And so we have to keep talking about it. And so bringing it to, there are people who are focused, solely on education within the law enforcement and first responders and the judicial system, say the prosecutors and the judges. My focus is working, more directly with survivors and the general population, so that we can be on the lookout for things, and not only for us ourselves, but for those around us. And if we don't accept certain behavior, I'm thinking, I had a friend who saw certain behavior in other coaches, which wasn't necessarily going to go anywhere. However, it was problematic, and so it's a matter of adults policing other adults too, and saying, hey, I think your behavior is a little inappropriate, and let's talk about what is appropriate. I think for every organization, I think that there needs to be education, there needs to be an orientation or whatever for not only the kids and the parents who are involved in that, but also for the, for those leaders, for the people who, so that they know what to look for.
I can remember when I was working at Walmart, and this was probably 15 years ago. We were having more and more transgender people being hired. And we had to go through like diversity training, so that we were understanding and accepting of their feelings and things like that, because a lot of people have ideas about those kind of things, and if you're not careful, you can offend people. And so it was a very big deal. Walmart had always been about people of different races being
Mhm.
respectful, and how you dealt with situations, about that with the employees and the customers.
Mhm.
But never really any kind of sexual orientation or anything like that was ever really mentioned. But then with that, um, seeing more of that in the workplace, we had more training on, that kind of thing. And I worked with some people who they were the nicest people. And it would just make me so angry if anybody, made a comment in the break room, or, in passing or whatever. And I would be like, oh, no, you don't. How
Right.
would you like it
Yeah.
if somebody said something about you like that, or whatever you're doing or whatever, And it just really made me, um, like a big outsider, because I wouldn't go along with
Mm.
everybody's, you know,
Right.
and I wouldn't like let people gossip around me. If
Right.
somebody, would start to say something about somebody or this or that, I would be like, okay, I'm leaving.
Mhm.
I don't think you should be talking like that, and I'm not going to listen to it. And so they all were kind of like, oh, she's holier than thou, because,
Mm.
she doesn't want to hear about this or whatever. But to me, it wasn't the correct thing for them to be doing. And just because they got away with it didn't make it right. And I was like, I can't stop you from your opinions or what you want to do, but I don't have to be a party to it. And I can
Right.
step away. Hi, Sophia, or excuse me, Olivia. I'm sorry. Um, and actually, when I went through my divorce, I nobody knew I was getting divorced for an entire year, because I didn't tell anybody. It
Right.
wasn't anybody's business. It was
Right.
my business. It didn't affect my job,
Mhm.
you know. So I didn't tell anybody. And once my divorce was final, it came out in the newspaper. They print
Oh.
that kind of court stuff. And so one of my cashiers came and said, there's not that many people named Echo. So
Yeah.
you got a
You don't have
divorce?
many places to hide.
And I was like, yeah, I sure did. And she was like, well, I'm so sorry to hear that. And I wish you had, told people, because we could have supported you through that. And I'm like, well, I didn't want people's pity, or, I didn't want to have to deal with it at work. So I just
Right.
kept
Everybody
to
has their
myself.
own
Yeah.
support system, their
So
own way of dealing with it.
one day I was in the break room, and somebody had said something about divorces or whatever, and I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all, I did get divorced, this, that, and the other, and almost every woman in there was sharing their story and telling me, like, I'm on my third husband, or whatever. And people that I thought, well, I thought that was your first husband. I didn't know that. Because if you don't talk about those kind of things, you don't know
Right.
that.
Absolutely.
And so a few days later, one of the managers called me into the office, and they said, we know how you feel about gossip. And so we thought we needed to bring this to your attention. And I was like, okay. And they said, people are starting to talk, because I guess you got divorced. And I said, well, yeah, I did. And I said, but nobody knew that until I started talking about it. So
Right.
if anybody's gossiping about it, it's because I talked about it.
You let the cat out of the bag,
Yeah.
right?
I
Really
said,
with it.
nobody found out and is outing me or talking about it behind my back.
Right.
I'm the one that started talking about it. And they just couldn't believe that that was the situation, because they just knew that, people were gossiping about me, and that I wouldn't like that. And I said, no, I told, and he did leave me for someone else. And I told that part of the story,
Right.
and so that was the main thing that
That
was
they were
being
gossiping
talked about,
about.
is that
Right,
I
right.
got left for somebody else. And they were even, the management was even like, you should have told us, you might have needed time off, or you might have, it's like, no, but I didn't want it to affect my job. I wanted, not have to deal with it there,
Sometimes you get enough turmoil in the rest of your life that like that's the only consistent
Yes,
thing
yes.
that
And
doesn't
it
involve
was
all of that.
it was like, I don't want to have to talk about it. I
Right.
don't, because I'm a very emotional kind of person, and once
Mhm.
I get upset and start crying, the more
Yeah,
you try to comfort me, the more upset I get, and the more it keeps going.
understand. Yeah.
And so it was like, if anybody was to have shown me any kind of compassion or kindness about it, I would have broke down and started crying, and then
Right.
everybody would have known
And then your
something
work's
was wrong.
affected and then,
Yeah,
so it's just eaten into another area of your life.
yeah.
So
So it
that
was
was
just
the one that you
easier not to
had
say a word
control over,
about it,
right.
you know. And then when my daughter, um, which she was 17 when the divorce happened, so not too long after that, she graduated from high school and she got a boyfriend and she went to college, and so then that part of my life changed too. And then I got hurt and became disabled, and then I eventually had to give up my job. And it
Mhm.
was like the job was the one thing that hadn't been affected by my
Yeah,
personal life. And
right.
then it was too, and
Mhm.
I did not want to not work. And I had put all of my uh, identity
Very
into my
common.
work identity,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I no longer was somebody's wife. I no
Mhm.
longer had a little child. I was still a
Yeah.
mother, but it wasn't in the same capacity.
Yep.
So that work identity was pretty much it. And so when I lost that, it was like, I can't wrap my head around this. It's like every aspect of my life has been turned upside down,
Yeah.
you know.
Now you gotta figure out who Echo is.
Well, and that's when a lot of the work started with my past,
Mhm.
because I didn't know who I was.
Yep.
I knew who I was as his wife. I knew who I was as her mother. I knew who I was as their employee.
Mhm.
But just me, the person, not a clue. So now I can look back and say, if I had not become disabled when I did, I wouldn't have been available to watch my granddaughter and have this time I've had with her.
Yeah.
So it's a blessing that I
Yeah.
lost that. At the time, did I think that? No
Oh.
way on earth. But now I know,
Mhm.
everything has to go how it has to go in order for the good things to come to you.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that, at the time. So now my identity is wrapped up in being her grandma, as well as being who I am as a person. But I've learned, because of the other things, even I'll always be her grandmother, but that's not all I am.
Yeah,
So, you
exactly.
know, I can move on and not have to have, not like before when, oh, I'm not a wife anymore. What am I going
Mhm.
to do? You know?
Right.
So that's one thing I tell my daughter all the time, do not lose your identity. I don't care how many hats you wear, you are yourself first, and you
Yeah.
love yourself for yourself, and then you have to give to all the other things.
Very
But
much so.
when
And
I
it's
was,
hard for a lot of us who didn't grow up that way, you know? We grew up as, I was a student first, and then I was a wife, and I was a wife, and I was a worker, and then I was a law student, and then I was a lawyer. And I found myself not having opinions about things that I thought maybe I should have opinions about. And so it wasn't until I had my complete mental break, that I had to put everything back together again, and I had to figure out, what was I putting together? How was I putting it together? Who was I if I wasn't all these other things? I lost my job, my house, and my husband within 10 days of each other,
mm,
and just lost myself. I lost my sense of self, so that's what it fractures. And um yeah, it's incredibly important for us to foster that in our kids, that they know that they are their own person, that they have their own identity, and that they have their own boundaries that they can set within our parenting reasons, right?
And
Um,
I didn't have anybody when my daughter was young, um, to help me with her, and
yeah,
so I
we
was
didn't
with
have
her.
the words.
You know, I was with her 24/7. You know, there was no separation between me and her. It was like
Mm-mm.
we were one. So when she was expecting her baby, I said, you know, you have to still have friends.
Yeah.
You have to still have a social life. You have got to have date night with your husband without the baby. You have got to do. And she, at first, she was like, you're worried about too many things. I'll be fine. And I kept saying, no, you don't understand. What I'm saying is, you have me to support
Hmm.
you. So if you
Right.
want to go out with your friends, I will have the baby. If you want to have date night with your husband or go away for your anniversary or whatever the case may be, you do that because you have me to watch that baby. Don't give up those pieces of your life just because you are now a mother and have a baby.
Hmm.
Because one day that baby's going to grow up and have her own life.
And that's
And
when
then
you have
you're
two
going to be,
strangers looking at each other going,
yeah.
uh,
And you're going to be
okay,
like, okay, so now what do I do with myself? You know?
yeah,
So, and now when she looks back at it and she'll say, well, so and so doesn't have their mom, doesn't watch their baby the way you watch our baby, and they can't do this and can't do that. And I said, because I was that person. I didn't
mhm,
have the support. I didn't get to do those things. And so I know how important it is. That's why I want to make sure that you can do those things. And then hopefully you'll remember when you're a grandma that, hey, it is important for them to have that time.
right,
People have said to me, because my daughter knows, she can call me and say, such and such came up at work. I'm going to have to stay late. Or it's so and so's birthday. I didn't know. Everybody's going, taking them out to dinner or whatever.
mhm,
I've got this coming up. I've got to go to the store and get stuff for it. I'll be a little late or whatever. I am like the most understanding babysitter ever. I'm like, you do what you need to do, and we will
right,
be here when you're done, you know.
yeah,
And don't worry about her and don't worry about me. Everything's good. Thank you for letting me know.
yeah,
You go take care of what you need to take care of. And she says, everybody is like in awe of the fact that she'll say, well, let me call my mom. As long as it's
right.
okay with my mom, we'll be good. And it's not that she has to ask me for permission. She's just respecting the fact that, oh, I might have had something planned, to
Exactly.
do,
Yeah, that extra
or
hour may be
yeah,
an imposition for you.
yeah. And I appreciate that so much,
Absolutely.
you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's nothing that she could come up with and say she needs to do or whatever, or even if she's just tired and doesn't feel like having the baby that night, and I'll, let the baby stay. It doesn't matter, you know. Whatever you need to do to be a whole person,
Yeah,
that's what
because
I
there's
want
a
you to do.
balance. There is a balance there, certainly, and I'm sure that she's a better mom than when she has your granddaughter, because she is able to breathe.
Yeah,
It's the parents who don't have support who have to do everything, and that can be just incredibly stressful. I do just want to say, Misha, my heart goes out to you. I know that you've had a hard go of it, and people in her community and um, in the support system and the court system and the DHS have not been there like they should be, for
yeah.
her and her family, and it's really unfortunate. And my heart goes out to you and what you've gone through. So I know they've been speaking in the chat a little bit about all of that. So
And that's the
I,
one thing about the village. We don't have to know everybody's story to be able to understand that people are hurting. and
Mhm.
have been hurt and have been let down by their communities, the courts, and whatever. And I don't think that we question, because we know, it's
Mhm.
like it resonates with us that yes, I can understand what you've been through. I might not have had the same thing happen to me, but I can understand. And a lot of communities I don't think are like that. I think people are too self-absorbed and too into their own issues, and they don't care about people like that. And that's the one thing that, since I've been a part of the village, I feel so accepted. And just like I'm not going to say anything that's going to shock somebody, that they're going to be like, oh no, this is what
Right.
her story is.
I
It's
think that
like,
we work really hard on being non-judgmental because we know that anyone can be an abuser, anyone can be abused, and it doesn't matter. And I look at this in terms of life, and some people will say, well, I don't like that section of the population because they're all like this or whatever. You know what? I don't like anyone who stuffs their agenda in my face. I don't care what your agenda is. If it's the liberal of liberal, if it's a conservative of conservative, I don't care. If somebody's not going to respect my boundaries, whether that's a heterosexual person or whether that's a bisexual person or whether that is a gay person, I don't care. It's the person. You're not respect. So it's like, I've always tried to tell my son, there's good and bad people in every facet of our world, whether it's conservative, no matter what label they put on themselves, there's good and bad within that, there's
that's right.
it's just the way it is. So um, looking at people for people and realizing that there's going to be, good and bad in all of them. And it's, so we try really hard not to judge because, I've heard it said in some circles, within this, it's like, well, I found out that this wasn't necessarily true. What somebody said was a lie. And I think they're just trying to get attention. And my reaction is, okay, well, maybe if they are, then they're doing it for a reason and they've got something behind that. There's a reason. There's some sort of trauma behind that, whether that is having grown up with a narcissistic mom or dad, or not growing up with parents, being part of a foster system, whether that is, that they've had some physical or sexual trauma in their past. There's some reason they're reaching out like that and they're reacting like that. So again, my reaction is, let's respond with kindness. There's some reason. And if you ever think that you're questioning, again, um, accept, but trust, but validate. And this gets into, particularly when it comes to giving money or gifts or things like that to people. If you have any reason that you think maybe something isn't true, but in terms of just our support and our words, to me it doesn't really matter much.
Yeah,
There's
that's how
something
I feel
behind
about it
that.
too. Whether somebody, I mean, it's not for us to say if it's true or not true. And it's not for us to decide, well, we'll accept this person with this situation but not this person with that situation. But I feel the same way. If you find out that somebody is, especially if they're doing something that hurts somebody else, I don't
Yeah.
believe you should support that person if that's what they're about. But I'm not going to judge that person and say, well, because so and so doesn't like you, I'm not going to like you. I'm kind of
Right.
unless you do it to me and I know firsthand that it's true, then I'm not going to make that kind of a judgment. But then again, too, I have bad judgment when it comes to letting people hurt me. So people could probably hurt me and I'd be like, nah, not that person.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
it gets tricky, when you find something and you think, well, maybe this isn't true, that you don't want people to get, sucked into that realm or whatever. And, you know, it can be very difficult, but I've been warned about certain people, that these people are troublemakers or these people are trolls or whatever. And, I've had certain people, they've come into my lives and they've actually been nothing but respectful. Maybe this is the one place that they feel that they can be open like that. And until they're not respectful of the people in my lives, they'll be welcome. I can't help what they do in other lives as long as they're not trashing my channel or the people or my subs, because of what we talk about here in other channels, then they're welcome. If they decide to be an ass on somebody else's channel, well, that's them. But
Well, and that's how I feel about it too. I'll be friendly with anyone.
mhm,
I keep my circle very small as far as people who I consider friends and that I let into my world. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be respectful and friendly to a lot of people. But
right,
I'm not going to allow anybody to come in and do anything that's going to hurt anybody else either.
absolutely,
But I have some friends that they seem to think they can tell me who I should be friendly with and who I shouldn't be. And I have to let them know, you have the right to your opinion, and so do I. And if I choose to allow this person into my chat or, whatever, that's my business. If you
exactly.
come in and you see that person's in the chat and you don't want to be in the chat with them, then you respectfully leave, and that's fine. And I'll understand that
Or
you
be
left
there and be
because,
cordial,
yeah,
you know?
you don't have to have any kind of feeling because I'm not going to sit there and say, so and so's in here. You better leave. You don't want trouble.
Right, right,
No, I'm not going to do that.
exactly.
And a lot of the people that I have in my chat, they're better at getting rid of the trolls than I am. And it's like they won't like the way somebody's talking about something, and they'll be like, getting rid of them. And then they email me, I hope you're not mad that I got rid of that person, but I didn't like the way they were treating you or whatever. And I'm like,
Mhm.
you got it before I had got a chance to. So that's great. As long as you're looking out for my best interest, I'm okay with that.
Right,
Hey,
right.
Alyssa. But I don't like to go in someone else's chat where I don't know people and I don't know the situation and I see people kind of bullying other people or whatever. I'll usually just leave because I don't know the situation and I don't know, where to.
Exactly. Like, I mean, there's a couple of channels that I go to that if you did not know the dynamic, you would just think that some people are just being horrible to some other people. But you know what? They just ball bust each other all the time. And that's the dynamic and that's what they do. And you have to take it from that avenue.
Right.
Otherwise, yeah, you would just think that everyone's being so dang mean. But
Yeah.
no, that's not the way it is. So
And
yeah,
and
that's why.
there's been creators who somebody else will say, well, you know so and so, and I'll say, yeah, but I don't think they like me. They'll be like, well, they're always so nice. Well, maybe a situation, happened in the past or happened to somebody else, and I have a different opinion because of that. But I'll go back and I'll be like, let me give them another chance. Let me,
Mhm.
maybe I was wrong. And then I'll find out, yeah, it was probably whoever was influencing me about it was wrong. And they're perfectly fine. So I don't try to like make those hard, where, oh, I'll never go in there again, or I'll never
Right,
talk to that person.
exactly. Or
I
sometimes
kind
it
of,
is, you go in again and you're like, "Yeah, you know what? I think they
yeah,
just don't like me." And then they're like,
yeah,
"But they're so nice." Well, they're so nice to you. And
you,
it's you know what? Because not everybody's gonna like everybody. It's just one of those things.
yeah, yeah,
You just can't help it. People are people are people, whether it's online or whether it's in the real world. I say the real world, the physical
yeah.
world out here.
Well, and I
Not
say that,
everyone's gonna like each other, and that's not our job, especially I think as content creators, we want everyone to get along from the aspect of being cordial to each other, but you don't all have to be friends. You don't all have to like each other. Just, be respectful. Don't judge. If you have an unpopular opinion, you might want to keep it to yourself. you
Yeah.
know,
And I
you
kind
need to
of
go
am
anyway.
like, I would never say, oh, because I'm subscribed to this person, you have to subscribe to them.
Oh,
I
yeah,
I
yeah,
say,
right.
here's somebody I like. Go check them out. See if
Mhm.
you like them. If you like them, great. If you don't, you haven't lost nothing by looking at it. But
Right, exactly.
a
So, like,
lot
check out my channel, guys.
of
See if you like it.
yeah,
If you do, subscribe, although I know most of you already, so I know most of you
yeah.
are subscribed, but if you haven't, check it out. I think you guys might like it.
But, I don't like, and I won't subscribe to somebody I don't like. If
Yeah.
I don't care who it is. If I got 10 people telling me this is a great channel and I look at it and I don't feel it, I'm sorry. I'm going to leave them alone and maybe I'll look at it later, or something like that. But I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, this is a great channel if I don't believe it.
Mhm.
Myself. And I think a lot of people, they get wrapped up in, oh, I got to get the numbers. I got to have all these subscribers and everything. And then you lose the reason why you were doing it in the first place isn't to get
Right.
the subscribers, you
Right.
know.
You sub to me, I'll sub to you, and therefore we both got one more. And yeah, but you know what? I lost 3 overnight. Where did they go? I haven't a clue. Maybe they were one of those ones who, just subbed to me because somebody told them to, and so they did, and
Then they
and
change
so
their
they've gone
mind.
away.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't know, but
and
um,
my thing too is I don't care how many are subscribed. I care about how many do I connect with? How many do I get comments from? How many come in my chats? How many do I feel like I've got a connection with? If I don't have, 10 people, I don't care how many are subscribed. If they don't come and watch you or watch your videos or anything like that, what's the sense of having them? That's how I look at it.
Yeah, and that's why that's the only reason that I've put out like the numbers. I mean, there's the monetization eventually, yeah, but because of my content, I'm not really hopeful that I really get any monetization of it. It's just kind of like, hey, I made that goal. But I look at 500 as okay, there's this 500 that there's YouTube benefits with it, but nothing that's going to affect me real much. To me, that means that for right now, that's 150 more people that the word has gotten out to that
Exactly.
hopefully see value in what I'm doing
Doing. Yeah.
and want to at least support it from subscribing. Maybe they don't always go there. Maybe they're not watching a video every week, but they want to support what we're doing, and hopefully they can share it with other people or talk to other people. There's been some people who subscribe just because they're supporting, but yet they've then told a friend and said, hey, I know about your situation and I think you might want to check this channel out. So that person themselves may have had really no need for my channel, but they're being a supporter, and
Right.
then they're getting the word out to somebody else who, hey, might actually need it. And so that is the type of thing. That's the only reason that I look at my numbers, and I set number goals for myself, just
Hmm.
because then I know that it's getting out there.
Yeah.
The word is spreading, and that means that people are talking about it. And it's not an easy thing to talk about, trauma of any sort. So that people, your average person, that it's not just people in the mental health space that are helping to get this word out. It's people who you might not have expected would take up this mantle, and that they are carrying this on, and that's getting to more people. That's what I want. I
Yeah.
don't want to just stay within the mental health field. And that's one of the things that I love about your channel and why I agreed to come on, is because you have so many different varied interests, and you'll just have people on from whatever interests that you have. And so you've got construction, homesteading, and cooking, and stamp collecting, or I mean,
Mhm.
it's just whatever the situation is. And depending on who's on, like, some of their followers will come, and they're so
Right.
different,
Hmm.
and it's fascinating to me. So I love what you're doing here, and definitely keep going. You've got a very eclectic group,
Well,
a mix of people who
and
come.
it's so funny because they are all of the channels are so different, from each other. And
Yeah.
yet, sometimes when we get on a topic, it's like it's so common
Mhm.
for everybody, and yet you wouldn't think that because of the variedness of it. But the main thing is we're all human beings, and we all have
Exactly.
struggles, and we all are on our journey trying to get through life. And so
Yep.
it all, works together. But I would never want to be, and it's kind of like Mary on Blessed to Crochet. She says, you don't have to crochet to be a
Mhm.
part of my channel. And that's how I feel about it. You don't have to do any one thing. You can do whatever and be whatever kind of channel you want to be, as long as you are supportive of the fact that I want you to be, happy and try to
Mhm.
live your best life.
Yeah.
I don't want people to say, well, I'm depressed and I'm going to stay depressed. Okay, you can choose to be happy if you want to be happy. And maybe you need a hobby, or maybe you need therapy, or maybe you need God, or
Right.
whatever. And maybe you're
Right.
going to find it in this channel, and maybe you're not. But you're
Yeah.
welcome to see what, there is. And
Right.
a lot of people at first, because I am a Christian and I am very passionate about my faith. And a lot of people at first were like, you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about politics. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try my darndest not to do that, you know. But then somebody I met on here was in the hospital, and they got in touch with me, and they were like, in another state, and they were upset, and they were alone in the hospital. And I was like, I can't be there with them. What
Mhm.
can I do? The only thing I knew to do was I could pray for them.
Right.
So I said, and this was in the middle of the night too. I went live. I did a 6-hour prayer stream. I was amazed at how many people came in and prayed for my friend in the hospital. And after that, I said, you know what? I don't care what anybody tells me. If it's good for my channel, bad for my channel, I don't care. If I want to pray for someone, I'm going to pray for them. And
Mhm.
if I want to talk about God, I'm going to talk about God. And I have all these devotional books, and you'll find video after video after video, because if I like it, I'm like, I'm going to share it.
Mhm.
I don't care if anybody else likes it or not. They might be like, I wish you would shush about that.
See, but that's
But
the difference with you, Echo. You share, but you're not pushing an agenda on somebody. You're not saying you have to believe this
no,
way. This is
no.
the only way to believe. It's like when I came into your prayer session on a Sunday, I'm
Mhm.
Jewish,
Yeah.
but I needed additional prayers. I don't care where you come from. I don't care, if you're Christian, if you're Muslim, if you're, whatever. I need additional prayers. I need the
Right.
universe to try and help these people from whatever
Right.
whatever that is. So I think there's a difference between sharing your faith and pushing it on somebody. And I
Right.
think that
Right.
people react to that, much better. They understand that, okay, it's just part and parcel of who you are. And as long as you're not telling me that I have to believe that way, we can coexist.
Yeah. And I don't want somebody else telling me how I should believe either.
There you
you know
exactly.
and that's a big part of it. And um with Kim from My Other's Keeper, I
Hmm.
go and I listen to her devotions, and she is so knowledgeable and understands things that I'm like, how'd she get that? Like, I didn't see that coming. And I'm like, I think God lets us each understand what we can understand, and touches us in a way that we can accept in our lives. And so she might be able to explain something to me that I already have the foundation. I'm a believer, but I don't know all the ins and outs, and all of it
Hmm.
like she does. But yet I wouldn't expect her to come to my channel and think that this is helping anybody either. You know what I'm saying? It's like we each have to do what we're comfortable with, and what we can
Exactly.
we can
It,
do
it
for
it comes
ourselves.
down to respect, right? you
Yeah.
know?
But I mean, I
Um,
enjoy listening to her, and I wish I understood it the way she understands it. And I couldn't explain it to somebody else the way she does, but I can tell you what I believe and what I understand, you know. And even my daughter sometimes will say, I don't know if there's a God, you know.
mhm. I've
Sometimes
had
she'll
some.
say, I think there's something,
That's
you
my
know.
brother is precisely my brother's agnostic, and I've had some very good friends who are atheists, and just because they're atheists doesn't mean they're not good people. And
Right.
they still have a good moral compass, and they still live by, mores that we would feel, just as comfortable with within our respective religions.
Hmm.
So it does. It comes down to just respecting the person. And as long as we're doing that, and as long as we're leading our lives with kindness, um, I think that we can all coexist and find common ground to be able to talk, not only about the issues that are facing, that I deal with the most on mine, but but any of our life issues.
Yeah. And I have a struggle knowing what and how to deal with my granddaughter about my faith, um, because I don't want to cross that line with my daughter. She is the
That's
mother.
good of you.
It,
That's
it
that's good
you
of
know,
you.
it's for her to decide how she wants to raise her, and certain things that she has let me know that she doesn't want to raise her in a certain way, and
Hmm.
I respect that. But on the other hand, there are things that just come so naturally to me that I might not be like, for instance, I have a Bible that's pink. It has a pink leather cover. My granddaughter will say, I want to see your pink book. And I'll say, okay, And then she'll ask me, what's it about? What's the story? And she doesn't like it because there's no pictures. But,
Right.
and I'll tell her, well, that's, the book that Granny reads that tells her about, God and Jesus. And she'll say, okay. And she'll go on about it. But I'm not going to not tell her the truth about what that is.
Right, you're just giving a very basic
Yeah.
explanation of, what it is, and, if she
Yeah.
wants to know more, there may be
And,
things that you need to
and
say,
like
"Well,
with,
you need to talk to your mom about that first, and then maybe we can talk more," or,
yeah.
whatever.
And like with Christmas, I always put up a nativity scene.
Mm,
And I've done it my whole life. And I did it when my daughter was young. And my daughter didn't really want her to be believing in Santa Claus because she felt like we lied to her when
mhm.
we did tell her there was not a Santa Claus. So
Right,
I
right.
said, well, that's totally up to you. However you want to raise her, if there is or if there isn't, or whatever. Well, just on cartoons and different things like that, she knew there's Santa, but she
Yeah,
didn't realize that Santa brought you presents. Just that
mhm.
Santa is part of Christmas. So we didn't have Santa. We just gave her the gifts from us. And so she said something about Santa. And my daughter said, Granny, have you been talking about Santa? And I said,
That was me.
I have not said a word about Santa. I've talked about snowmen and reindeers and penguins and things like that, but I have not specifically said Santa. And so, then she realized that she can't keep her from knowing anything. She's going to go to
Yes.
school with kids who believe in Santa.
Exactly, yeah. We live in a
So
Judeo-Christian dominated
yeah, yeah.
society, and therefore it steeps into a lot of things.
Yeah. And so I had told her about the nativity scene and that, baby Jesus, and it's baby Jesus's birthday. And that's why we, celebrate Christmas and, whatever like that. Well, my daughter was okay with me, telling her
The
that kind
basic
of
story,
story.
right.
Yeah. But she didn't want me to tell her that there is a Santa Claus. And I was like, okay, well, I don't care if if she believes in Santa Claus or not. I would like her to believe in God, but
Mhm.
I don't care about the Santa Claus thing or whatever. So then my daughter said, I'm not going to do Easter Bunny and Tooth Fairy and all that stuff, but she will get something for for losing a tooth, and she still gets Easter baskets and things like that. But it's
Mhm.
not that the gifts don't come from these imaginary
Right,
things,
right.
you know,
Mhm.
and so I can accept that. But I want her to know that I'm not going to, go against her wishes or, um,
It's really nice of you. It's
you
really
know,
great of you to respect,
go around her, so to
where
speak.
her
Yeah,
boundaries are in regards
yeah,
to how she wants
yeah,
to raise her children.
yeah.
This was I had many a headbutt with my parents in regards to this, as to, whether they knew better than I did, as to how to parent my kids. And it's tough, I, I, I feel empathy now of the possibility of sitting on that other side. God, I hope it doesn't come for a while. Let's knock on some wood. I'm sorry. I now have a bug on my ceiling. I swear to God, these stink bugs went in my walls, froze to death, and now have thawed out again
Oh no.
and have started. And I don't know where they come from. It is the
Mm.
most bizarre thing. So I'm just gonna scoop this way just a tad bit. So if it falls, it will fall on my head.
They tore down a wooded area to build these apartments, and I'm right next to the retention pond. And for some reason, I get a lot of spiders.
Oh,
And so my daughter is deathly afraid of the spiders, and my granddaughter will just scream when she sees one. And so it's like, it's a spider. It's not going to hurt you. Do not mess with it. It will not mess with you. You know that they're
right.
there. But they make out like it's, an alligator in here trying to eat them or something. And I'm like,
Oh,
calm down. It's a spider. Okay.
you've never, I say you, but I have never laughed so hard than when I heard the coming out of my, master at my taekwondo school and jump a vertical jump like 36 inches up to the table because there was a spider going across the floor.
Oh my
And you're just like, oh my gosh, you can take down people like, 5 times your weight, and there's this itty bitty spider going across, deathly afraid. I mean, there's some childhood fears we just don't grow out of.
Well, I attribute my not being afraid of a spider or a grasshopper or a lizard or anything like that because my dad would take me fishing. And
Mm,
I don't remember what kind of fish we were fishing for, but we would use crickets sometimes as the
right.
bait, and definitely worms. And so, if you are going to fish, you have to deal with that kind of stuff.
Yes,
And
yes.
so I never got freaked out by it,
Squeamish,
you know.
yeah, about any of
So
that.
I'm like, catch it and we'll take it outside. Don't kill it, whatever.
Yeah, that's the things I don't want them in my living space. They want to live out there. That's like okay. I won't crush them if they're out on my porch, but not in
Well,
my
we get
office.
the little lizards that change color.
The
If they're
chameleons.
on something brown, they turn
Yep.
brown, and if they're on something else, they'll turn green or whatever.
Yep.
And when I lived in Indiana, I actually went to the pet store and I bought me two of these little lizards. And I brought them with me when I moved to Georgia and did not realize that in Georgia they are everywhere,
Oh,
just
really?
running around. And I kept them as pets, you
Well, they're
know.
good at eating mosquitoes.
Yes, they are. And I
So,
don't I don't mind them. So they'll be on my patio out there on my plants or whatever. And the little tree frogs, they'll
oh
be
yeah.
hanging on my planner or whatever, and I'm perfectly okay with it.
See, I'm
My
okay
daughter and
with I'm
granddaughter
okay
come
with
over
those.
and they freak out. There's a frog out there. Oh my God, call the police.
Yeah,
Arrest the
exactly.
poor
No,
little frog.
I'm okay with those.
I'm like, no, 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 no. And I'm really big about nature as far as like you don't mistreat a plant or a tree
Right.
or
Yeah.
you don't kill anything, and my
Right.
daughter's
Yeah,
like,
unneededly.
you know, certain things should be killed, mother. And I'm like, no, they shouldn't. I'm okay with them. And so my granddaughter has a collection of rocks. And it's because I use rocks in my planners and stuff. And so she goes through and she picks out the rocks she likes. And then whenever we go anywhere, she will see rocks and she will collect them and bring them. And my daughter's like, all the toys she has, you got her out there playing with rocks. And I'm like, she likes her rock collection and
Yeah.
that's what she wants to play with. So I'm going to let her play with the rocks. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's like, let her be a kid. Let her do whatever she wants to do, as
Yep.
long as it's not hurting her or anybody else. I don't care.
Rocks, mud pies, all that kind of stuff.
Well, she loves to jump in the mud puddles. And the other day it was pouring rain. And so here she's got her rain boots on, her raincoat, her umbrella, and I'm trying to get her in the car and she's jumping in the puddles. And my
Yep.
daughter's like, oh, there's even better puddles at Granny's house. Get in the car and you can jump in the puddles at Granny's house. Boy, when I got home, she got out of the car and I mean, she was running all over. I had
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
change her pants when we got in the house because they were soaking wet from her jumping in the pool. But it was so much fun for her. I spent the whole day getting in and out of the car aggravated because I was getting wet. And she was just having the best time. She didn't care if she got wet, muddy, whatever. It was just a fun day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I try to look at life through her eyes because I feel like my childhood was not happy and carefree and I didn't get to be a child. So when I let her do things like that, then it's like, okay, this is how I should have felt. I should have been excited about a puddle and. So I do try to do that. Body
Oh,
says
that's good.
she loves
It,
that short. I love that short I did on her splashing too. But God knew I needed her. I needed my granddaughter to come into my life. So
mm-hmm.
uh, now that I have her, I don't know what I would have done without her because she's the whole reason I started trying to get healthy and trying to lose weight and trying to
Oh,
get
that's
myself
great.
together,
Right.
because I want to be there for her and be
Yep.
strong and be here. Um, which I don't know why my daughter didn't make me feel like that, but something about having a grandchild, it was just like, oh my gosh.
I think maybe it has partly to do with our age when we get to that point. Most of us in general,
Yeah.
we have our kids who still feel a little invincible, at least with our bodies. It's definitely takes a toll on us as we get older. And believe me, I know that. I slid down the stairs today.
Ooh.
Yeah, I was carrying laundry baskets and I have these really cozy socks, but they're also slippery
Oh no.
and just
Ooh.
woo, bam. Yeah, I landed on my back and just, slid the rest of the way down. So, um,
Be careful, you're gonna break a
with it.
hip.
So, uh, yeah, I know I was lucky so far. I think I've just banged up and bruised some things. So I'm definitely gonna be changing out my ice pack
Oh my
when we
goodness.
get done. Put down a new one. So Yeah, we just have to be careful as we get
Yeah,
older.
I was so paranoid with the ice and snow we got here, because
Oh
I
yeah.
broke my tailbone up when I lived in Indiana because I slipped on the ice and fell and went straight down on my tailbone. And so I've always been, very cautious around snow and ice. And it was very deceiving the way it looked. It didn't look like it would be
Yeah.
slick, but it was, even people when I did the short of my granddaughter playing it, they commented about how crunchy the snow sounded. So it wasn't like
Mm,
powdery snow, it was more like frozen
right.
snow. Um, and I was like, yeah, oh, there's ice. I'm gonna fall. So I acted like I
Yep.
was a 90-year-old woman, like, oh, don't let me fall.
Oh, my mom did it when lived in Iowa, and she's carrying groceries in, and she went woo, bam, had messed up her back ever since. So yeah, no, I definitely very careful when it's icy
Yeah.
out.
And we never, I mean, hardly ever get snow here.
Yeah, for you guys, it's
So,
very unusual.
nobody even had the salt to put down to help it melt or anything. So,
Yeah, I
and then it's
know.
still
You
kind of
guys are just
cold. So even though where it is melting, now there's water on the ground. So if it gets cold enough, that will just turn to
too
ice.
cold. That's gonna freeze. Yeah, black ice is nothing to joke
So I'm
about.
like, no, 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 no. I'm not prepared for that kind of weather. Mm-mm.
You're like, I'm in Southern Georgia for a
Yeah.
reason.
I mean, it was fun in Indiana growing up as a kid, playing, having snow forts and snowball fights and sledding and, all of that stuff. As soon as I was an adult and had to go to work, and I'd have to get my car
Right.
unburied, and you get where you're going and
Yep.
your pant legs are frozen, and stuff like that. You had to bring a change of clothes, and you might get snowed in wherever you were at, so you should bring extra clothes in the car. And I said, mm-mm, I need somewhere warm. Little did I know, I didn't know South Georgia got so hot. So I
Oh,
traded the
yes, you got the
frigid
opposite end of it.
cold for extreme heat, but I can deal with the heat a lot better than the snow.
Right.
But then
Oh,
for
certainly.
35 plus years that I've lived here, never had to worry about the hurricanes. Now, the last 2 years, we've had three hurricanes. So now I'm
Right.
like, well, hurricanes are coming here. Now we got snow. But what else is going on? It's like, this is supposed to be
They said it's
safe
about time
here.
you have all 4 seasons.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy. And that when they kept forecasting it, my daughter was getting all excited. Oh, they're going to close the school. I kept saying, don't count on it. It's not going to snow here. And then she calls me Tuesday night and she's like, look out the window. It's snowing.
Nanner,
And
nanner,
I'm like,
nanner.
no, it's raining. That's rain. She's like, no, that's
That's
snow.
it.
Then she calls me the next morning and she's like, now go look out your window. It's really full of snow.
Right.
I'm like, I'm not going anywhere.
Unbelievable, right? Yeah. It's been so cold here during the earlier part of the week that they, had to cancel school because the kids couldn't wait at the bus stop because it was too
Yeah.
cold. So, yeah, but hopefully we're supposed to get a warm up. I think maybe there was one today, I'm not sure, but, definitely by tomorrow, at least to freezing, at least to where you guys are
Well,
now type
see,
of thing,
we
so we're
don't
just not
usually
frigid,
we don't
frigid.
usually even get freezing, down to 32.
Yeah.
And the past 2 years, I left my plants out on the patio. And there was one night where it dropped and everything frozen, died.
All it takes,
So
right? Yep.
this
Just
year,
that one
we were
freeze.
going out of town for Thanksgiving. And I said, I'm bringing the plants in because my luck, I'll be out of town
Right, just on the
and
off
it'll freeze.
chance.
And so I brought them in. And then, like the week after Thanksgiving, I was like, you might could put them back out, but why risk it? So I left them in. Now I'm so glad I did because now they're all safe.
Oh, good. So they're still in.
And
Awesome. Yeah.
my daughter does not have a green thumb, and I keep giving her plants, and she keeps killing them. And so I finally got her some at school that are growing. So then she decided she wanted a couple for her house. And she has a patio too. So she's got them out on the patio. And I said, you really need to bring them in because they might freeze. And she was like, I don't want them in the house. And I was like, I don't care. We're not killing them. You got to bring them in. So now she's got it in the house. She said,
Right.
well, even when it warms up, this one I might keep in the house, and I put the other ones out on the patio.
I'm kind
Yeah,
of
she's like,
liking
I kind
this.
of like this one. It's so funny though. And she has a teacher friend that I had fixed plants for, and she's taken them to her, and she's killed them as well. So it's like a running joke. It's like, has anybody got live plants in the classroom? Because I keep sending you plants, and y'all keep killing them. And they're always, oh, I need a plant that doesn't need sunlight and doesn't need to be watered regularly. And I'm like,
That would be an air plant.
you got to remember to
Yeah,
water 'em.
I managed to kill an air plant as well, but it's because I forgot I had it, and so I didn't water it. My son was like, "It only needs one spritz of water once a month. You couldn't even do that." I'm like, "It just kind of looks like decoration after a while. I kind of just forgot. I'd be better off if I had an indoor plant. I had to water every day. I just don't have anywhere where the situation of our thing, we don't get sunlight in anywhere where it's real great. So that's the
Well,
problem of having an indoor plant
at
here.
first, I was trying to, make sure for each plant that I watered them like it said, and they had the right amount of sunlight, and all of that. And then I got so many of them that it was like, you know what? Y'all need to adapt. Y'all are going to all get the same amount of sun, and you all are going to get watered once a week. That's it. And believe it or not, they all have adapted pretty well. And I water some a little heavier than I do others, but it's still once a week kind of thing. Because I can remember to do them once a week. I can't remember, oh, this one this week, that one next week, and all.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh, no, that would take
And
over
so
my
when
life.
people ask me, well, how do you take care of that plant? I put it there and I water it once a week. Right. That's all you gotta do. Don't have to do nothing special.
Some sunlight and some water.
Yeah.
That's all we
And you
do.
talk to them. You have to talk to them. My daughter thinks I'm a little crazy because I'll say, oh, you're looking so nice. Or I'll say, oh, look, you're getting a new leaf. You're growing. It's great. Proud of you.
They like to be talked to.
She's like, what are you doing? So now I got my granddaughter talking to them and pointing out when they get a new leaf too.
Oh, awesome.
Say, look. Or if it blooms, if it's one that happens to bloom.
Right.
She'll freak out about that. But she'll look at them at least once a week to check them to see if they're blooming or not.
Oh,
and I don't have the heart to tell her that I have one plant that it blooms one time and then it never blooms again. And it already bloomed. But she's sure it's going to bloom again. And I'm like,
you never know. Could be the anomaly one.
That one's not supposed to bloom again. And then I have one that a friend of mine gave me, and she had the same plant, and mine bloomed, and she's had hers for like 10 years and it's never bloomed. So she was like, when I told her that mine bloomed, she was like, I can't believe yours bloomed and mine never has. And then like 2 weeks later, that one bloomed.
Late bloomer.
Yeah. I said, well, it just was waiting for the other one to bloom, and then it had the competition, it had to bloom then. But,
oh my gosh, too funny.
In Indiana, I could not grow anything. Everything I tried to grow died.
It's tough here because even with the sunlight, you have to have them close enough to the window to where the sunlight can come in, and it gets so cold then even up by the windows. Mm-hmm. Unless you've got A+ windows or whatever. So for me, it's kind of tough to do anything inside.
I hope that when it does warm up and I put some of these back out, they'll be all right outside in the humidity, because some of them I have put out and had to bring them back in because they did not like it out there.
Mm.
And so I'm like, don't get too comfortable in this
Yeah.
environment, because some
Tell
of
him it's
you
like,
have to go back
this is
outside.
temporary, guys. This is
Yeah,
temporary.
this is just for the winter. My daughter's like, yeah, you're going to have all the plant racks are going to be in the house and you're going to have plants everywhere. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't want to lose them all because it's expensive
It
to buy
is.
plants.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Particularly, some of them are more expensive than others. And,
Yeah.
we've tried in certain areas, like even outside, to do ones where we don't get very good sun or we don't get very good shade or, whatever the case is. But I think we've just been too busy. I think it'll be better now that my son's not in school. I think we're going to try again this year. So we'll see what happens in the springtime.
Well, I think mine all thrive on a little bit of neglect.
That's what my mom always said. My mom always just like, you can't be too attentive to them.
Yeah, and you can overwater them.
That is yes, that is true.
You
That
know.
is definitely true.
And so I try not to get anything that's too picky.
Yeah.
Because then you end up like, oh, I have a black rabbit foot fern, and that thing is very finicky, and I'm almost to the point of saying, if you don't perk up,
Right.
you're gone, because
Right.
I don't like the way it looks, because it just looks like it's giving up. It's just
Acclimate or gone. You got to adjust.
perk up a little bit,
This
or
is
I'm
what you
not
get,
going
and
to
that's it.
keep you, because you look ugly like that. But I do have one big plant that has actually froze both years outside and actually came back both years.
Oh,
And
wow.
and so this year I was like, yeah, we're not going to try for the third time.
We're not risking it. Right.
It's
Right.
in the house now. Plus,
Yeah.
a friend of mine gave it to me, and I didn't have the
Oh.
heart to tell him the first time it died. And it had started coming back whenever they had asked me, how's the plant doing? Oh, great.
We're good.
Great.
Ta-da!
I'm like, please don't ask to see it, because instead of this big tropical plant, it's a little bit
Right.
green thing. So I definitely didn't tell him when it happened the second time. And then I thought it was really gone. And I was like, I'm going to buy another one, and I'm never going to say anything that it's not the same plant.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then doggone if it didn't
bait.
come back. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm protecting this plant now, because I don't want anything to happen to it. And now they never ask me how the plant is. And I'm like, yeah, now if I had got rid of it and didn't have it, you'd be asking me all the time.
Oh, of course. Right. If you left it out.
Now that I've taken such good care of it and everything, now you never ask me, how's the plant doing?
Right.
Which I didn't want to take the plant to begin with, because I knew how the person was. That even though they were giving me the plant, it was still really their plant.
They were going to be checking in on it.
They were going to criticize my care of the plant.
Oh, God.
And I was like, you're making a mistake. You're making a big mistake taking this plant.
You're like, don't do it. Don't do it. Okay.
Don't take it. And then I did anyway.
Yeah.
So I try really hard not to let people give me plants, because then I feel some kind of way if something doesn't work out.
Right. Yeah, you feel bad, of course.
So I'm like, no, it's okay. I have enough. I don't need any more. But I don't like cut flowers, because they're gonna die.
Oh yeah. You get 3-4 days out of them, and that's,
so
maybe
like,
a week, depending.
I'd rather have a plant
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
than cut
If somebody's
flowers.
going to give me something like that, I would
Yeah,
much rather have a
yeah.
plant than a bouquet of flowers.
Let me, get me a plant, and then I'll try to keep the plant alive. My sister
Exactly.
like my sister likes to send people flowers. I've always wondered if she had like stock in the flower, like the 1-800 florist or whatever
Yeah,
there is.
exactly. Or maybe it's just so she, because she wouldn't feel bad if somebody sent her and they died since she couldn't keep a plant alive anyway. She's
Yeah,
just like, here.
yeah. But she'll
You,
she'll send
there's no
flowers all the
obligation.
time. Yeah, I'm like, don't send me flowers. Save your money. Don't do that.
Get your
Yeah,
plant, right? But if you don't know somebody and you get them a plant, then it's an obligation to care for something, right? And they might
that's
not want
true.
that obligation.
That's
So
true.
I think you
Yes.
do need
If
to
you
know the
if you
person a little
don't
bit.
know, ask before you
Yes.
do send somebody a plant.
Yes.
But my sister does things like that, and then like even if you tell her, please don't send me the flowers because I'm going to be depressed when they die,
Yeah.
or whatever, and she'll still do it, and then she'll say, "Did you like the flowers?" Yes, I
For the
loved
first
them
2 days.
until they died, and then I had to throw them away, and then I was sad.
Right. 100% understand.
She's
Understand.
funny like that. Oh, but this is what she sent me for my birthday: a case of protein shakes, because we were talking about what flavors we liked.
Mm-hmm.
And so she decided to send me a case of them from Amazon. I come home and here's this big box on my doorstep. I'm like, I didn't order anything from Amazon. I go to pick it up and it's really heavy. And I'm like, somebody sent me something heavy from Amazon. Well, as soon as I opened it and saw it was the shakes, I knew right away it was from my sister.
Right.
But I was like, why would you pay that? Shipped to my house. And she said, well, I knew it was something you would like because you said you liked them. I'm like, yes, I do like them. But I would have never thought you would send me a case of them for my birthday.
Hey, at least it's something you're going to use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I was so excited. Here's this big, heavy present. What on earth could it be?
Right. Protein shakes.
Protein
Oh,
shakes.
please, thanks. That was not exactly what I was thinking of in my head, but Echo, it has been absolutely lovely talking to you. I'm going to need to get some more ice on my
All right,
back.
honey, and I'm sorry I kept you so long.
Oh, absolutely not. No, this is no longer than my lives normally are. So
Okay, okay.
don't feel bad
Well,
at all. I
thank
would
you
have
for
gotten off if
coming.
I had to.
Thank everybody for coming in and for all
Very much
your
so.
lovely comments. I know this was a hard subject to talk about, but I'm glad that we did it. And it needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
So I'm very thankful that I've met you and that you have the channel that you have, because I know you are helping people, and
Thank you.
that's important. So,
I always say it's my pleasure and my honor to run the channel. It wouldn't be here if it wasn't needed. Unfortunately, it is needed, but I will definitely be here as long as people are getting something out of it. So
that's a great attitude to have about it, because you're going to get something from it too.
I do. I
Yeah,
absolutely do.
yeah,
Every time I can interact with everybody. So
yeah. You got bugs flying around, don't
I
you?
do. He went from my picture frame over to here. I was like, okay,
I
he's
was
off
like,
the ceiling now.
I'm fixing to duck as it's coming across.
I was like, okay, you can stay over there, just don't go to the ceiling up here. I'll get him when he comes down a little bit further.
Oh my goodness. All right, well, try to stay safe from the bugs.
I will. I
All
definitely
right.
will. So
Thank
thank you,
y'all so
everyone.
much.
And
And
thank
we
you,
will
Echo,
see
for
you
having
next
me.
week.
I appreciate it. See you.
All
Bye,
right.
guys.
Bye.